everyone, and welcome to Unbound Bahrain. Good morning. Firstly, I think this is the most incredible venue, so a big thank you to the venue for allowing us to put an innovation festival here. We all have to be on our best behavior, otherwise Khaled and everyone will kill us if we damage. So no food or drinks inside, and just take a look around that we're in this beautiful building. So welcome. How many of you were here last year? Put your hands up. How many of you here it's your first time? Wow, so it's good to see. And how many of you are too shy to put your hand up? Very good, thank you. At least someone's being honest. Right, so I'd just like to take this moment to thank a few people for enabling this event to happen. Firstly, it's a deep gratitude we have to EDB and to you, Khaled, for enabling Unbound to come to Bahrain and enabling us to be here, and what you as EDB and StartUp Bahrain have done with creating this ecosystem is incredible. So a big thank you to EDB, especially to the StartUp Bahrain team, especially to Pakiza and to John for, I think, us driving you mad and helping us understand the ecosystem. And we're very lucky that we have we've got a local team here led by Aziza and Marwa. I think Aziza you saw before. I think she does a lot of emceeing and TV stuff here. And so it's great that we've got a team who are connecting to the ecosystem. So thank you for helping Unbound be a part of your wonderful ecosystem. What's so exciting about this region, as we've all seen, is the growth and the transformation from a energy-based economy to a knowledge-based economy, and I think how Bahrain is positioning themselves at the center of this is exciting. And just from seeing the number of hands up who were here last year to this year is testament to the growth and the exciting things. And I'm a big follower of your Instagram, both Pakiza's, both StartUp Bahrain, and it's like last night there was, another event. It's, they were seeing so much going on. I'd also like to thank Amazon Web Services, who we launched a very exciting startup competition. We did a tour. We were in Saudi, we were in Egypt, we were in the UAE, and then the final of this startup competition is going to take place tomorrow. So we're looking forward to seeing who's going to be the winning startups. So make sure you all come and you all see there's lots of startup competitions happening. We have this main stage. We also have a future stage, I think it's this side, and that we have workshops and other exciting activities. I'd like to also thank the Bahrain Airport Authority, the company, I saw this morning 100 of your team here. I hope there's still some people in the airport as well, but it's been wonderful that we've been learning about how you're creating this modern, innovative airport, and I'm sure we're excited to hear your presentation later and all the stuff going on. So it's great to see such wonderful developments. Also, Zain, we were told that the Wi-Fi in this room was not possible. We were told there was jammers, but thank you to Zain. We have incredible I think one of the tech team here were like, now we have to make sure that all the ballets aren't going to be disturbed with people's phones going off. So thank you to Zain for the second year running being involved. We have this great female founders panel and other initiatives happening, so thank you for your participation. I'd like to also thank the BIBF. We've got great workshops and panels and discussions happening with yourself, so thank you for being involved. There's a few more sponsors and partners I'd like to thank. Credimax, thank you for being involved. It's great that fintech and this whole ecosystem is developing, and you're a key part of that. And I'd like to thank DIT, the British Trade Association government. Where are you here? We've got the ambassador coming tomorrow, and it's great to see the delegation of great British startups and others. Mr. Ambassador from India, we have a wonderful delegation we've seen, and it's great to have you here and the fantastic ecosystem that we're going to learn about over the next few days from India. And I'd like to thank Brink, Flax 6 Labs. You've got your demo day later. This stage will be changed to their demo day, which we're looking forward to, and as well as thanking many of the other partners, community organizations, and those of you for being involved. I think that's enough from me. The most important things to realize: go outside, speak to the startups. We've got founders and investors, networking session. We've got some events tonight. So it's a little bit of a more informal event. So pop in, pop out, come in here. We've got great speakers, and we've got some really interesting networking activities happening. So I hope you enjoy. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce Khalid Rumaini, the CEO of Bahrain EDB, who's going to share a few opening remarks. Please give him a round of applause.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellency, we're delighted you could join us, ladies and gentlemen. I want to first start by thanking Sheikh Hamad and the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities. I'm always amazed at how beautiful this venue is, and I'm grateful for them allowing us to use it for 2 days. So Daniel, if we break anything here, you're not going to get this next year. And I'll be in trouble. So I was given a speech to say today. I thought my team is going to be disappointed. I'm not going to give that speech. You're not here to hear me speak. You're here to hear startups and innovators, venture capitalists and companies. You're here to network. But if I can leave you with 2 thoughts, then I'll have done my job this morning. First thought is this is a golden age of innovation and entrepreneurship in the world. I wish I was 17 or 18 and starting a startup right now. It is globally, technology has democratized information. You can go onto Google or YouTube and find out how to do practically anything. Educate yourself. That was never possible even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So technology has made information available to everybody all over the world. Venture capital has provided billions of dollars of capital to startups and entrepreneurs, from India to Silicon Valley, to Shenzhen, to Riyadh, to Bahrain, to Dubai. Venture capital and entrepreneurs are now getting access to capital that's never been seen globally. Telecom and broadband has made supercomputers available to people in their pockets all over the world. When you talk to the founder of Instagram, he tells you that it was actually the camera in the iPhone that made Instagram possible. So whether you are doing a photo app or whether you are starting a restaurant app, the fact that people carry the supercomputer in their pocket has allowed you to access millions, if not billions, of consumers immediately. And then entrepreneurs have become rock stars. Tim Draper, who's speaking tomorrow, created a show about this. So here, as an entrepreneur, you have a golden age in which you can realize your dreams. The environment is available, but it takes resilience, takes hard work, takes determination, and a good idea is not enough. It takes the resilience and the determination to make it happen. I think if I talk globally, that's the global scene. In the region, I'll compound that by saying the region has now got excited about startups in a way that hasn't been the case even 3 or 4 years ago. You only have to look at Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and what it has done with Munsha'at and other entities. You have to look, or Taqniya, you have to look at the UAE with Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Entrepreneurship. Here in Bahrain with Tamkeen and the Bahrain Development Bank, Oman, Lebanon with Circular 331, Egypt, Jordan. The region has woken up to the potential of startups. And so again, if you're an entrepreneur in the region, you have unfettered access to government support and to capital. It's an exciting time. Now, let me talk, my second thought is Bahrain. So here's this macro environment that is so encouraging for entrepreneurs. My second thought that I want to leave you with is that Bahrain is going to become a leading hub in the region for startups. I was talking to His Excellency, the Ambassador of India, and he was telling me India started on this road 5 or 6 years ago. Of course, India has a heritage, large population, but it takes time for you to become a startup hub. It doesn't happen overnight. And in Bahrain, we've embarked on this 2 years ago. We are determined to continue. We believe we can become a leading hub in the region. Why? Well, number one, small is beautiful. This country allows you to pilot your idea and then scale it across the region. You'll have access to government decision makers. You'll have the ability to try out your product in the GCC and then test it, fine-tune it, and then if it's successful, right across the doorstep is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and, of course, the neighboring GCC countries. I was an entrepreneur, still am an entrepreneur, and if I had not started my business here, if I had started in a bigger market, I wouldn't have succeeded. So I believe you start it here and you scale it beyond. We have a government that's determined to make startups succeed here. And it's open to startups from across the region and beyond. I'm delighted that we have a big contingent of startups from India. I think India has tremendous potential for us. And I would like to see that Bahrain becomes the choice for Indian startups as they look to scale in the GCC. And of course, our doors are open to UK startups, our GCC brothers. But I think you have a government here that is willing and will be determined to make you succeed. And we've done that in a couple of ways. We've started a $100 million fund of funds that's already deployed 45% of its capital to about 5 venture capital firms. We've started incubators and accelerators. Only in the last year, you're going to hear some of them like Flat 6 Labs and Nest and Brink and C5. And we have the talent that we're going to train and equip to be ready as engineers, as data scientists, because end of the day, that's what startups need. We did this week because we think that seeing is believing. We think that we can put on articles and talk to you through Instagram, but it's not enough. We want you to come, visit this country, meet the people, see everything I've told you about, see the country for itself. We were voted twice over the last 2 years as the best country to live in for expatriates globally by Internations. HSBC put us in the top 10 globally. So besides all of the other elements, it's a wonderful, friendly country to be in, to live in. We want you to see that for yourself. We want you to see what we've put together as an ecosystem. And I hope over the next 2 days, you get a feel for what we're doing around incubation, acceleration, and technology. So I hope you enjoy the next 2 days. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and good luck with the event.
Thank you, Khaled. Thank you very much. Again, we are excited that there's nearly 3,000 of you registered, and this is also wonderful to see that so many different organizations and community partners involved. And again, I'd like to take the opportunity, Khaled, to thank, on behalf of Unbound, again, yourself and EDB for all enabling this to happen. Right, that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over now to Aziza, who is going to be emceeing the program. And Aziza, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Danny. And thank you, Mr. Khalid, for such an inspirational speech. Without further ado, we're going to start our first panel discussion. So I'd like to call on stage, and I'll hand over to Frank Meehan, co-founder, Spark Labs Global Ventures from the UK. Could you please? Yeah, let's go. Exciting. We're going to talk about state of play, Gulf innovation ecosystem.
Hello, everyone. So, here he is. He's just getting mic'd up. So welcome, and thank you very much for coming along today. So we're going to talk about the key thing that is going to make a difference here, which is how do we energize and change the Gulf ecosystem to become truly innovative. So I'm joined here today by a great panel. So we're going to start with Hamad here. Quickly, just introduce yourself.
My name is Hamad Khalifa from the Economic Development Board. I currently am in special projects. Our goal really in special projects is to look at a wide spectrum of items that relate to investment in Bahrain that don't traditionally fit within the KPIs of the traditional business development departments. Most of my work has been around cloud and growing the cloud ecosystem and pushing innovation through both government from a policy perspective as well as working with companies directly.
Fantastic. Khalid?
My name is Khalid Zain Al-Abidin, CEO of Itqan Financial. It's a regulated investment firm based in the Kingdom of Bahrain. We focus mainly on venture capital related investments and private equity advisory investments.
Mirza?
Yeah, my name is Mirza Asrar Beg. I'm the founder of CTM 360. That's what a lot of people know me from. But I've extracted out of CTM 360 the team of R&D, and I've set up a separate company, EDX Labs. And we're already working on a few more technologies. I've launched DMARC 360 and Pentest 360 and one more company.
Fantastic. And our special guest now.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I was engaged with Mr. Khalid's speech, so I was very into it. My name is Hussein Al-Mahmoudi. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Sharjah Research and Technology Park and American University of Sharjah Enterprise.
Okay, and a little bit about myself. So my name's Frank Min. I'm the co-founder of what's now the largest pan-Asia accelerator, early stage and follow-on investment group. So we're in Korea, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, and now we're moving into the Middle East. We're in Oman, in Muscat, backed by PDO with our energy program. So we are incredibly interested in and working very hard on the integration of work between Asia and the Middle East, which is what I'm really fascinated on. So we're going to kick off. So we're going to start this with kind of a structure, and I'm sure a lot of the people here are familiar with the challenges. What we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get solutions out of the panel today. So we're going to start off with the first start, angel investing, and which is very early here. It's early. We don't really have the family offices putting investment into it, and we don't really have yet, the big VCs that have come down to help the infrastructure. So, Khalid, you're deeply involved in this. Why don't you kick off and tell us what are the 4 things that need to change?
I think we can go on all day if we would speak about early stage investment, but if we really focus on the core pillar, which is angel investing, it is at a very nascent stage at this stage in the region. And to build basically the angel networks and platform, we would foresee basically 4 initiatives that I feel the region has to focus on when it comes to angel investing. The first of which would be encouraging and developing angel networks, communities. This is something that is currently lagging in the region. If we look and benchmark at the international markets in the Far East Asia, in Europe, in the US, angel networks and communities have definitely built in, whereby they bring in a lot of different expertise together. So when in these networks, you'd see lawyers, you'd see investment bankers, you'd see VCs, you'd see founders coming in and investing and developing the ecosystem. The second main element that I believe that the market has to focus on is basically mentorship, as you rightfully outlined. Today, if we look at the investment landscape in the region here, I would say 70 to 80% are private family offices. The rest are corporates. The private family offices have invested within the last decade mainly in real estate and conventional asset classes, specifically predominantly in real estate. So venture capital is quite new to them. So mentorship programs have to be developed. Currently, there are a couple of angel networks in the region here that are doing so and enticing and encouraging angel investing. So I think this is a core element where we need to basically, teach and develop the system. The third is basically incentives. Now, like Far East Asia, Incentives have been developed after mentoring, family offices. They need incentives. Saudi Arabia has recently developed a very interesting program. The fund of funds in Saudi Arabia has allocated a good allocation from their portfolio to actually invest and support angel investors invest by providing matching funding programs. So that has enticed and driven a lot of the families to actually apply for the program and invest. And I'm sure that other GCC countries will follow as well. And it's an excellent pilot.
That kick-started everything in Korea and Singapore, the matching, 100%. Yep.
And I think the fourth main element is basically building up the infrastructure and the regulators, bringing in the regulators to basically putting a framework for the angel network, for setting up angel funds and angel investment funds.
So those are four very, very key things. I'm going to ask you, how many people would consider themselves angel investors here? Less than 10? So, I mean, that's a big issue, right? So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of wealth and there's a lot of people who can make those investments. So I think, what do you think, Hussein, how do we get this audience to change and start getting involved, not just attending conferences, but actually doing stuff?
I think there is a lot of education needs to be done in the part of government, in the part of the private sector, and in the part of academia as well. So I think we need to enforce this model of triple helix, more synergies between the various players, so we can develop a common language that everybody can understand. What's happening now is really there's a disconnect between the aspiration and the expectation of these investors, between the aspiration and the expectation of the academia, between the aspiration and expectation of the government, and the entrepreneurs is also another dimension to it. So I think we need to develop a model in this region that is really our own model, that is developed, taken into consideration our own characteristics in this part of the world, our own environment, our own culture, and I think that's the way forward. What's happening now is we try to bring whatever is happening in Silicon Valley or Singapore or China and impose it here by force. It's not going to work. I mean, we talk to if you go across the GCC and talk to every individual body that is responsible for entrepreneurship, they will tell you the same thing. That we invest, we encourage, but the result is not there. And I think that's the reason is that we haven't spent time in developing the soft learnings that we all understand. We speak terminologies that most of us, we don't understand. So I think we need to invest in education, encourage our colleges and universities to play a bigger role, and just minimize these silos that we have between the various sectors.
I mean, that's what changed in Asia, was when everyone stopped looking at the US and started thinking about how to do it themselves. So how do you do that? I mean, where's that education going to come from? Who's going to take the initiative to do that?
I think we have very good universities. We have very good talents. We have very good caliber of educators. We just need to empower them. And if you look at China or in US or in Europe, universities plays a bigger role. So the government, I think, it has to promote the role of universities and give them chance to just get out of their box, because at the moment they just, they're sitting there, And we have an example I can share with you in Sharjah, which is we like to claim that we are the capital of education in the UAE, and we have a city, the university city for those who visit Sharjah, which hosts 47,000 students, 17 institutions. We spend $1.5 billion every year on education, and we 3 years ago we started to do different things with the culture we have. So I think education is key, and as government we have to start, in my opinion, slow down and start to create models that we all contribute to it, and it's not imposed from top. It has to be bottom up, in my opinion.
So, just before we come to the founders aspect, which is going to be, I'm going to turn to Mohammed here. So, so you're doing fantastic work with the corporates, which are key here, to get them to move to the cloud, to understand how to move into new technologies, etc., which is a key part because the corporates really have to get involved in the startup sector, which they don't really do here. What else do you see, following on from Hussein's point around education?
I'll get to that point, but if you don't mind, I'd like to just go back to the point Khalid was making with respect to investors investing in the market and the sentiment around seed stage investment. Seed stage investment is one of the riskiest parts, or if not the riskiest part, of the entire investment life spectrum of a company. It's kind of why companies are looking primarily at growth stage investments. Especially in the region, if you have a concern around the protection related to your investment, your ability to pull your capital out in the event something goes wrong, then what's going to end up happening is you're most likely not going to make that investment. In other parts of the world, what we've seen are areas where they have significant investment protection rules and regulations. Bahrain has now implemented its bankruptcy laws. Countries in the region have started to follow on suit, and at the same time, you have other entities like Lebanon with Circular 331 that are also introducing mechanisms to kind of lower that risk for a person that's taking that seed stage investment. So ultimately, I would say that while seed stage investment is limited as of now, it's growing with the fact that we're putting in place those mechanisms in the region to protect investors. Where we're still facing some challenges, and it's nice to talk about building alliances and building consortiums, and we've been trying to work with our partners in doing that as well. But beyond that, if the investor doesn't feel protected, and then second, they don't feel that their investment is frictionless, they're not going to want to invest.
Yep,
and right now, unfortunately, in pretty much every jurisdiction in this region, if you want to make an investment at a seed stage in a company, it's not only a zero-sum game, which we've been lowering to allow that to not be a zero-sum game, but it's also a traumatic experience to both the company and the investor. Because the company and the investor have to dedicate that when they want to onboard that investor, roughly about 2 weeks at best to start onboarding that investor into that process. So neither of them really wants to engage until they're both feeling comfortable enough that they're growing. So our focus for us now is, as we start looking at the entire ecosystem of investment, specifically seed, is how do I make sure that investor feels protected, and how do I make sure that that investment on its own is frictionless? As soon as you start getting into that spectrum and you start solving for those things, you're going to start seeing corporates which have an interest in, this is to your second question, which have an interest in actually innovating and don't have the internal capacity to build, in saying, look, we're not just going to get into a service level contract with a company to deliver something. We're going to have that company either, we're going to buy them, we're going to acquire them, it's going to be a quick process, we're going to take a stake in them, and as long as they feel that process is frictionless, they're more likely to take that risk and make that assumption with that company. That way they can quickly pivot if it's not working. Right now, if they were to try to make that, if they were to try to do an investment in a company to deliver services, they cannot pivot. That's what our goal in Bahrain is really to look at those two parts of the spectrum on the investment side, and to help in trying to resolve them with the private sector.
Perfect. I mean, that's excellent. So, I mean, is this the place to come and do business then, Mirza?
This is. See, right now, the region is buzzing with all the startups and the ecosystem and everybody. There is so much encouragement being set to be on that scale. And what I hear right now is about a lot that we need to be incentivizing the private sector to get involved, because I think all will agree that the governments here are playing a good role. Everywhere in all the Arab world, especially in GCC, Bahrain, Saudi, UAE, everywhere the governments are pushing a lot, where they're trying to say that, let's go towards the startups. I want to bring in a different factor to the same thing, saying, you know what, not just show them the incentives, show them the threat side also. When we are educating the people, we should be telling everybody, look, the world is going through a digital transformation. AI is going to change our life in the future. Now, if we don't change ourselves now, we will be lost. So all those comfort zones where we think that our investments are there and there is, as a trading mindset, that we are getting those returns, it won't be coming anymore in the future. Alibabas of the world will take over. Now, if that is being provided or mentored or educated, maybe from the government side to the corporate sector, to the owners and the wealth funds of the region, saying, you know what, it's going to change in the coming, and the change is coming in very fast. So if you want to really exist in the future, you have to invest on that aspect now, and what better that you invest on those entrepreneurial mindsets which are in your part of the world. Otherwise, you will still end up on the consumer side, not on the producer side. And we have all that capacity. We have the talent. We can do pure innovation. Normally, when we look at the innovation being done in the region, it's being done as a replica, some model which has worked somewhere else, and we build a local replica. What we need to be encouraged from the government side, as well as the private sector, is to come up with pure innovation, something which we can build here and sell to the rest of the world.
Now, let's follow on that point. So we at Spark Labs have partnered with Phase Ventures in Oman and with PDO to drive a long-term 5-year project. And that 5-year project for PDO is R&D, education, local jobs. So, you know, over-reliance on, you know, outsourced consultancies like Wipro, et cetera. You know, why is the money going there? The talent and information is being lost. Knowledge is being lost. It needs to come here, like coming to your point, as you go local, as you go to the cloud, like that should be locals helping with that, education, et cetera. So that's what PDO and Oman is like really, really pushing towards. Now, I want to come onto this point because I think this is a key point. Like, so I want you guys to have a talk about like R&D, how do we go towards deep tech? Like one of the things in Singapore has changed is that, you know, Singapore is driving very, very hard on deep tech. There's an over-reliance on e-commerce and marketplace, not much else. So like getting the stuff out of the universities, cyber, et cetera. So I want you guys to have a chat about this because I think this is a key point. We need local companies that are going to be doing more than just, you know, websites to be really involved.
Yeah, I want to mention something here about the R&D part. And that's what needs to be more done again from the government side. Though they are putting in a lot on the R&D side, the private sector has to get involved. This is why I set it up, because I went through the pain in the last 20, 22 years trying to build technology here. One of the gaps which I felt was that we don't have a private R&D companies who are really doing the R&D of the scale where we can help the entrepreneurs on this end, in this end. So that has to be channeled rightly. There has to be more communities working together across the region who are more focused on R&D aspect. I think...
Yeah, I mean, Khalid, the same?
So,
yeah. How are you going to change it? You're going to be very deeply involved in the angel community, so you've got to get people investing in this.
In terms of the angel community, in addition to the angel community, what I think is we need to attract talent as well. Now, talent is in place here, but there are certain sectors that we lack talent in. And in order to do that, we need to bring in basically partnerships with certain jurisdictions and countries that bring in that. Now, deep tech, for example, Far East Asia has been quite active on the deep tech side. We need to bring in partners and build partnerships to bring in talent, to bring in the technology, to bring in the know-how to support the ecosystem.
Well, I mean, and Mohammed, so you've pushed a lot of the banks to be very innovative on the cloud. That puts Bahrain in quite an interesting position in the region. How do you think there's an opportunity for the banks to take advantage of that?
Yeah, look, our goal with the banks is get the law out of the way as much as possible so that you have, again, frictionless momentum to do whatever you want to do. Get tender processes and things limited, get audit requirements minimized so that when they decide to take a stab at it, they can. And we spend a lot of time talking to banks about design, architecture. Think about what your core business is. How can your core business change? Are you buying a product that fits your core business, or are you buying something because You know, everybody needs to buy, and you know, nobody got fired for buying an IBM,
Yep.
right? So I think you're finding a greater willingness from these companies to engage in that space. What you're still finding limitations on is talent pool. And even when these companies actively want to engage, they often don't know where to find that talent to help them engage with it. That's why they spend a lot of time becoming customers of companies outside, because it's a 3-4 year process to build the talent internally. So we spend a lot of time with schools and universities. We spend a lot of time building out vocational training programs and making those vocational training programs free. And we're working on initiatives to help facilitate private sector investment into R&D into these companies and building out that space. Because again, it's all about trying to remove the friction from that element. Now, the talent pool that we've been developing in Bahrain with respect to cloud, and cloud is an interesting one because EDB is very project driven. So we don't like to get into theoretical exercises typically without a project sitting on the other end of the spectrum. Amazon gave us one of those projects that we could actively work on. We recognized a 40% year-on-year growth in cloud in the region. We recognized 500,000 people as a gap globally in trying to move cloud services on. And we said, well, look, this is a particular sector where we can really make a dent in the market, because now we have the ability to do what, for instance, Intel did in Israel, which was have a company that is generating talent and that is outputting that talent back into the industry, so that talent is there and investable for companies that are looking to do R&D because it's trained up. Again, this is a 5-year process. And whenever it comes down to R&D, it's never going to be an overnight process. You have countries like Singapore, which have billions of dollars in funding in their R&D budgets. Bahrain doesn't have that today. So we look at the resources that we already have, which are schools, universities, companies, and we actively engage and work with them on building out the talent pools that are investable.
Yeah, I like to
Perfect. I
build.
mean, that's exactly it. Without that, that's how we're going to change.
Yeah, I like to build on the role of R&D institutions and technology transfer institutions. I mean, it's a global trend where you would find thriving, investors and business and private sectors around education campuses around the world. So we need those type of institutions to be able. Okay, the digitization part is good. It's we need online business, etc. But there is deep science opportunities that we can develop and we can nurture in this part of the world. So I think we need to also focus on those parts of it. In UAE, recently, the government mandated all the universities now to become free zones. So universities will start to sign up companies, give license, and set up entrepreneurs. So the whole education in the UAE system has been changed toward this. And I think, with Bahrain, I think Bahrain is a great city and a great country to really lead on certain industries like finance, for example. And I think you have the talents here. You have a very good government regulations. The environment is very positive. So I think yes, role of education is key, and the private sector, we spoke about it earlier. I think we need also the private sector to play a role, because at the moment, in our part of the world, the private sector, when they come to supporting, let's say, entrepreneurship, they come from a background of corporate social responsibility, and that has to change. I think the government can play a role, and in the UAE we are calling for, instead of corporate social responsibility, corporate research or deep science responsibility. So these companies have to embed an integral part of their budget allocated to research. And that's the only way I think we can win, because we don't charge them taxes, right? So there's no incentives for them to really contribute. So it has to have a structure.
Yeah, I want to just add, because Bahrain has had this policy of cloud first already for the government as well. So they're already encouraging. AWS is here. Now is more on the private sector to adopt this cloud, which you're rightly doing with the banking sector, but even the IT organizations which are servicing, because we have a lot of IT companies here, they need to be getting on that, and they need to be encouraged somehow, or maybe incentivized from the government side. And the government at the same time trying to find out some quick wins. When we say quick wins is that if there are companies who are more focused on big data, analytics, and they can prove some, then the government should be encouraging or supporting them and highlighting them. That
Perfect.
quick wins will encourage them, change the mindset overall.
Okay, well, this is great. So, I mean, I think, Kyle, we were talking earlier about, like, we need a document which says how things are going to change. I think what we're going to do, Danny, is we're going to take this panel's transcript and we're going to write it up and release it as a blueprint for change. So I'm going to do the last quick question. So if you're a startup here in the region, or if you're a founder and you're thinking about going into, I'm going to ask you, what two things, or what's two sectors do you think that are really interesting for the region to be strong in? As a founder, I want to get in. What do you think is going to be a great sector to get into that's going to be strong in the region?
Me first?
Yeah.
So
We've got a few founders out
I
here.
have two sectors in mind to that question. What I would first say is follow your passion, because if you're not passionate about it, the road to being a startup is rife with difficulty. And this is not a rosy follow your passion thing, because you're going to feel pain. You're gonna go through ups and downs, and if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you're gonna drop it. But beyond following your passion, where I see potential synergies and a lot of opportunity personally, is first of all, anything cloud. Cloud's growing at a rate of 40% year on year. Everybody's moving into software as a service as a format. The CapEx is decreasing, everything is decreasing in this space. So anything cloud. Fintech is a huge opportunity. Bahrain's really taking the lead here.
Yep.
With our new open banking standards and the regulator being open, there's an opportunity for private sector companies that are looking to function on the adjacencies of banks and to pick up opportunities there, and then potentially even to become challengers themselves, to connect into people's bank accounts and offer added value services. That's huge. And then the last point I'd make, or the last sector I would look at, is IoT and /AI. The opportunities in Bahrain in particular are tremendous. Across the region, they're quite high. But just to give you a couple of examples.
We're going to have to keep moving. Yep. So quickly, Khalid,
I would
we've
definitely
got three there. Perfect.
Definitely agree with Sheikh. And in addition, IoT, definitely yes, is a major sector. Specifically, when you are linked to Greater Bay China, which is today the hardware city of the world. And I think we already have that in Bahrain through a leading accelerator.
Perfect. Melissa?
Okay. I just want to make one point. I know time's up. The part that you mentioned, the passion part, also add to that if somebody wants to set up a company, then they need to solve a problem which they are being impacted with as well, or their community is being impacted with. So that can be scaled. And then I go with yours with the fintech part and cybersecurity. I'll add to that. That's my area.
I think digitization.
Sorry?
Digitization.
Just digitization, which is a big thing. Great. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much for everyone here. We're going to write that one up. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank, and thank you, our guest speakers, for such valuable insight and experience. Next, we're going to have Amazon Web Services talking about the culture of innovation.
Good morning. Marhaba. This is quite an opportunity. I really enjoy the chance to talk to startups, and I see a lot of you in the field. I also see some faces that I recognize. I'm going to just push this back 1 second. There you go. So my name is Zubin Chagpar. I look after the Amazon Web Services business for public sector across the Middle East and Africa. Doesn't sound very startup-ish-y, but I do also have a startup background, if you will. I've made the great decision to invest in startups. They keep me awake at night as I work with them. They're in different fields across startups. I've had the chance to talk to startup enthusiasts on a weekly basis through the Startup Digest, where there's about 50,000 folks there that get to read some things being sent out by great bloggers across the world. And also, I've developed a course on rapid prototyping that I unleash on unsuspecting students as well, too. So a little bit of startup cred. I'm also happy because today I get to wear jeans instead of having to wear a suit as well, too, which is always nice. I was asked to speak about innovation and the culture of innovation at Amazon. I hope this is of interest to you. I'm going to go through this presentation with you, and what we're going to highlight is what is Amazon. I believe that most of you probably have heard of Amazon, which is fantastic, but I'll touch on the actual history of Amazon and how innovation is part of what we do on a regular basis. I'll also touch on what is the culture of innovation at Amazon, and then I'll jump into some of the organizing principles that we use to continue to invent and to develop on behalf of our customers. The slide presentation is getting ahead of me right here, so let me jump right into it. So Amazon itself started in 1994 as a startup. This is not me trying to sell my home, by the way. This is the original home that the startup began in. It's what we call one of those garages. And in those garages, we were actually wrapping up books and sending out. And when I say we, this was the founding team, not me, myself, back in 1994. Very important is, during that time, we were highlighting that what we want to do, and I'm just going to jump right here. This actually came from our shareholder letter from our founder, Jeff Bezos, is that we want to have a day one focus. And this is probably where we can define what innovation means. Innovation has many definitions, but the one that I'll use is that you're constantly changing the status quo. You're not going into a mode of what we call day two, where you're in stasis, where you're just accepting that you might have a great or the best product, you don't change it, you try to continue to develop that in terms of incremental or no updates, and you leave that out there with your customers. We take an approach that our customers are loyal until you don't delight them anymore. And that means on a daily basis, when we wake up, we think about our customers and how we can optimize. Let me highlight that through examples. First of all, in terms of some of the history, many of you probably know Amazon as a bookseller. Anybody bought a book from Amazon? Thank you for that. We're still selling books. They're still available. You can go online today and buy books. And that's how we started. And it allowed us to really test a hypothesis. And I'll show you an example of that later. But the hypothesis was, hey, will people actually buy books online? And it was really easy for us to do that in terms of shipping a book, because they're flat. You can put them into a box. You can send them out as well, too. And an advantage we had as well, too, is that if you looked at a traditional bookstore, they wouldn't have millions of books at their disposal. They would only have a certain amount of shelf space that they could put a book on. But for us, if we put it online, we can actually almost make every single book available and then be able to send it out to a customer too. So it allowed us to test out a hypothesis and move from there. Today, we're operating in many different spaces. So you can see that we're, I'm just going to see the different views here, but this is all good. So you can see that we're doing drone development, video streaming, we've got some grocery delivering, and also in the corner there we have Amazon Web Services, which is the area that I represent as well too. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. Now, this is what we call a fulfillment center, not a warehouse. It could be called a warehouse, but we call it a fulfillment center, because it has that sort of connotation of constant motion. We're fulfilling our customers' orders in this. And now this is one of our first generation fulfillment centers. It looks pretty neat. If you can see the different objects there, and then we would have people walking through the warehouse, which you can see is quite big, pick up the item that a customer wants, put that into a basket, bring it to a packing area, put that into a box and send it out, which is great. We had very fit fulfillment people, because they'd have to walk a lot during the day, sometimes as much as half a marathon a day to get the items. But it's not necessarily optimized. So as we get to our 8th generation fulfillment centers, this is what they look like right now. So you have a mini little robot that has the shelves themselves sitting on top of there. And then the actual robot of the shelf comes to the person who's picking and fulfilling the order. So they don't have to walk as much, but they're getting what they need. They put that into a box. So that's that sort of idea of constantly innovating too. This means that they can focus on the quality of packing the order instead of huffing and puffing around the warehouse to find the specific items for what they're doing. This is another look at how it looks. So that's from our Amazon robotics team. So this is applied robotics, creating solutions that can be deployed in the field in our fulfillment centers. So there's an example. Here's another example of innovating on behalf of our customers. Who's heard about the concept of a minimal viable product? Yeah, I'm seeing some items. And more in the back, so I'm guessing more of the startups are in the back. I see some people waving as well, too. I'm not sure if they're waving to me or just waving that they know about minimal viable products, and it's great to see you, of course, as well, too. We use that concept when we release services for our customers. We call it a minimal lovable product, or a minimal lovable feature that we can get out there. So if you're familiar with the Echo, this is a device that you can speak to and you can listen to music, you can do some banking, you can ask facts, you can set up appointments, you can tell the time, and even get the weather as well too, and many more features. It's a community device, meaning that we have developers from around the world, startups, big businesses that are creating features and skills and adding to that. But as we released this a couple of years ago, what we focused on was we focused on a couple of things, but the one delightful one that was picked up was the ability to play music. And people love music. So our customers love that. And then we continue to iterate on that. So that's an example of a minimal viable product or a minimal lovable product. Now, Amazon Go, some of you might have heard about this. Let me ask a question before I explain what this is. How many people here have walked into a store, grabbed an item? Oh, okay, there I got one person who's walked into a store. Thank you for that. Okay, great. Very sharp. Thank you. Walked into a store, picked up an item, put it in their pocket, and walked out. Who's done that? That same gentleman has done that. Security, you might want to pick up those people too. At least keep an eye on them as well too. Well, Amazon Go is a concept store that we've created that allows you to use some of the technologies, cloud-based technologies. It could be artificial intelligence, machine learning, payment systems as well too, to allow somebody like that gentleman over there to be honest, to walk into a store, be identified, pick up an item, and then walk out as well too. And the reason we're doing this is to test out new concepts that remove friction from our customers. Right? It might not seem, it might be a normal concept where you just take your wallet out, you take a credit card, and you go and buy something, and that's fine too. But sometimes you might encounter long lines, you might not be able to find what you're looking for. So in these stores, the idea is that you won't have to go through something that's undifferentiated at the store, where you would go to somebody as a cashier, and they would go and punch in your order and walk out. That's something that can be done with technology. What's even more important is that person who's in that role can take on a more value-added service. They can spend time with their customers. They can maybe develop other areas of focus, like making a sandwich for customers out there, bring new lines of services to their customers as well too. So this is a concept, again, how we're innovating on behalf of our customers, working backwards from our customers. I'm going to use this opportunity to do also a shout out to a startup that I met actually a couple years ago, and I was delighted to see here as well today. They're called Lazy Weight. They're in the corner of the pavilion area out there. Lazy Weight is from Saudi Arabia. They won a regional competition to be here today. And what they're doing is they're using technologies in the cloud to build out solutions for their customers, which are restaurants, and their customers' customers, which is the restaurant's patrons, people like you and me going into a restaurant. And I was delighted to hear as they talked about what they're doing, how they're working backwards from the customer. They're saying, well, Zubin, don't you hate waiting to get seated at a restaurant? What if you could just walk in? Similar to that gentleman walking into the store and then walking out with something in his pocket. And so I said, of course, I said yes. And they said, and wouldn't you like to be able to see a dynamic menu that highlights your preferences as well? And I said, that sounds actually pretty good too. And then also work with the waiter or the maitre d' of the restaurant to understand other concepts as well in terms of the menu, the food, or any other items. And I said, hey, that sounds great. They got me on 3 items, and I like dealing with 3s. So he said, so these 2 gentlemen were explaining this to me. This is Asad and Ajman, 2 identical twins, by the way, so you'll be able to find them out there. I won't say which one is the cooler one of the 2. It's Ajman. But you can find them out there and learn more about what they're doing. So really delighted to hear the startups are taking this approach of working backwards from the customer and learning from their customers as well, too, and congratulations to them. I mentioned that I'll cover the culture of innovation at Amazon. So, in terms of how we do it at Amazon, it's not like we're waking up every day and saying we need to be more innovative. We are saying that we need to be customer obsessed. We need to work backwards from our customers. We want to think long term as well too. If you think short term, you're going to get short term results. You think long term, you're going to be there for a while. And we also want to invent and be willing to fail. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later in the presentation as well too. That's a hard thing to do, by the way, to take these risks and fail. It's not easy, but you have to have that ability to take those risks and also be able to be misunderstood for a while. And we'll touch on an example on that as well too. So first on the customer obsession side, this is really our secret sauce, if you will. It's not so secret. I put it up here, presentation. I see cameras coming out. It's a good side here. So this right here, what you're looking at is what we call the Amazon flywheel, or the virtuous circle. And what that is saying right here, this cycle or circle, is that if you provide a service to a customer that they like, they'll use it. If you reduce the price or add features that they're looking for, they'll continue to use it even more. They'll tell their friends. You'll also attract a community around that. You'll get sellers and other folks to come and be part of that community too, and that will help you to also offer more services and drive down the cost. And if you keep doing that, you're going to be around for a while, and this is what we do with all our offerings. We take that sort of approach with our customers as we move forward. Now, another part was the concept of, you're making decisions and thinking long term here. So here's an idea of being stubborn on the vision. So when we come up with a concept, and I'm going to show you an example in a moment, we say, well, you know, why are we doing this? What is the benefit here to the customer? Why are we making this happen? And we stay pretty stubborn on that. But in terms of how or what we're going to do, we're very flexible. And we'll work as teams, we'll work with partners, we'll work with customers to get that right solution out there. So here's an example. If you're familiar with the Kindle, this is an e-reader. To your left, that is the Kindle first generation. And the main, most lovable feature that we added onto this Kindle was the ability to download books through a 3G connection. So you didn't need to use your phone, you didn't need to be on a Wi-Fi, you could just get a book anywhere. And that feature really took off. If you look at the device itself, it is pretty clunky. And this is like, we're talking about 2007, so it wasn't necessarily the most I can't say the word. Anybody help with the word? Ergomatic device in terms of putting in your hand, but it did a very exciting feature that customers weren't used to and were delighted by as well. And now you see a more recent version on the right, so we continue to iterate and make that service better. I'm going to jump into the idea of being misunderstood for a long time. So often when we think about our customers and we think about the services we want to bring out there, it may not be intuitive of why is Amazon playing in this field. I'll give you an example. If you've heard of Amazon Web Services is the cloud computing part of Amazon. We're going to touch a little bit more on that as we go through this talk. But when we first came out with that, people were saying, well, why is this e-commerce play, a bookseller, offering technology services? And the reason why is we realized that a problem that we were facing in terms of scaling and making features available was one that our customers were actually feeling as well too. So if we made that service available, maybe they'd love it and adopt it, and they sure have, to the point that today this one part of Amazon is a $30 billion US business. Now I'm going to talk about how we organize. So this was the other part about organizing in terms of innovation. So we have 4 areas: the mechanisms, our architecture, which I'll touch on, our culture, and then how we actually organize the people and how we organize our teams and empower them to come up with stuff. So first of all, if you haven't got the message, we work backwards from our customers. We're always working backwards from the customers, to the point that when we have our team meetings, even here with my team, we always try to make sure that we have at least one chair in the room that is empty, and that chair represents the customer. Because we could lose we could lose sight of what we're trying to do for our customers, talk about features, we might talk about new products, and then forget that actually at the end of the day, we're building for our customers. So to do this and to help center ourselves when we have an idea, we take this process. We ask ourselves these questions as we write in what we call a press release. This is not a press release that we're going to hand over to a news outlet. This is something that we use internally to help center our thoughts. And what we do in this case is we ask, who is the customer? Who are we trying to serve by this? Is there actually a customer behind this? Is there an opportunity that we're trying to work with our customers on, or a problem to help solve, or removing friction? Are there benefits? Is there a need or potential want? And what would the actual experience look like? So press release could be quite simple as this. This is an actual press release we did internally for the Kindle device in 2007. And this is how we wrote it. So it reads like a press release, and it helps center our thoughts. In addition to that, we actually do what we call an FAQ, or frequently asked questions. We do one internal for some questions that might come from multiple teams, and we have a team, a small team structure in the company, multiple small teams, and we also do an external one too to see what kind of questions might come out. Like for instance, how much would the device cost, or where would it be available, or who would distribute it? We'd do that type of FAQ as well too. And that helps us to get to a point where we can start kind of drawing out what the experience is. We can either build a prototype by hand or sketch something out as well too. The more developed the idea is, the more high fidelity you'll see in terms of the SketchUps here on the right versus the left. And what you'll notice here, I haven't talked about coding, I haven't talked about actual physical hardware prototyping yet. All we're doing right now is validating the idea, getting feedback from our peers and from the market as well too before we start investing in this. This takes a lot of upfront work, but it pays off in the long term too. And I believe as many of you guys are doing your startups, you probably take a very similar approach. I hope what you're not doing is coming up with an idea and then running out and seeing if you can get somebody to do the software development behind that. I would really stress try to get feedback, and then move towards development, even with yourselves. Get some of your coding skills out and get your laptops out and see if you can build it too. And this is the approach that we take. In terms of how our architecture as well too, so really quickly, this was the first Amazon website. Is there anybody in the room today that would buy anything from a website that looked like this? Anybody want to put up your hands? Even the same gentleman who walks into stores and takes things and walks out said no. He didn't. He put both his hands down. Yeah, exactly. So this was the first site. But what it did is it allowed us to test our hypothesis. We put that out there, and then what we ended up getting was this idea that people would actually put their credit card in and buy. How this actually looked in terms of a few years later is we had this internal monolithic system called Obidos. Obidos is a fast-flowing river in the Amazon. And it has there's a town called Obidos, and it's a tributary, so it moves very quickly. But our internal architecture was very slow. So we realized that we had to break this up. And now this is the most exciting part of the presentation if this works. This was not done with machine learning. This was not done with artificial intelligence. This was done by just pure presentation skills. Did it work? There you go. So this is what we did. We broke up our architecture into multiple parts, and really what it looks like is multiple APIs where our customers, and we're internally as well too, we can grab the services we need to bring out solutions for our customers. Services like storage or databases, but also artificial intelligence or machine learning or blockchain or business analytics as well. So this is what it looks like today. These are the different services that we have. And I'll jump really quickly in terms of the final two ones, which are our culture. So in our culture at Amazon, we have these leadership principles. And these leadership principles, there's 14 of them, and they help guide us in hiring, they help us make decisions, and they also help us to ultimately get out the products and services that we bring for our customers. So a really important part of our culture. We also hire builders. This is a key point. When we meet people who want to work at Amazon and we want to come on board, we try to make sure that they can build things, that they can actually put things together. And you'll see why that's important as we move to the organization. We, and as many startups do, and I want to make sure you don't lose this as you start to grow, because at Amazon we feel like we're a startup. We have about 500,000 people, but we're a pretty large startup, but we feel like we're a startup. And as you go on your journey, we want to make sure that you have this sort of concept of building and experimenting as well too. So we hire builders that will experiment. We have this concept of making decisions quickly. And when we make a decision, we put a litmus test. And the litmus test is simply, is this a one-way door? If I walk through this, will I not be able to walk back? Most decisions in life are not one-way doors. There are a few. I won't get into them right now. Most of them are one-way doors. And then, so not one-way doors. Two-way doors are where you can come back as well too. So make a decision quickly. You can always come back in most cases. We learn from our failure. So this is a highlight of learning from failures and then continuing to build stuff as well. And this was the Amazon Echo device. So I'm going to summarize right now in terms of how we organize ourselves. I mentioned we have multiple small teams. We call them 2 pizza teams. These are teams that you could feed with 2 pizzas. They're small so that they can move quickly and they're empowered. And they work with, of course, other teams to bring out the services and products and solutions that we bring to our customers. To summarize this, we could have just put this one slide here and this would have summarized, but really the focus here is focus on your customer, invent, constantly invent and iterate and bring new solutions, and be patient. It's not easy, and I know it's not easy doing a startup, but as you bring a new service out, definitely be patient. We're delighted to be working with startups across the world and in MENA. This is a super call out to many of the startups, and many of them are here today, by the way, as well, too. Please go introduce yourselves to them, or if you are one of those startups, talk to everybody. I do want to stress that we have an early stage startup program for startups. It's called Activate. We work with a lot of the accelerators and venture capitalists around the world and here in the Middle East. If you're here today and you're a VC or accelerator, please stop by our booth, and we're happy to get you started on that so you can offer this to your startups as well too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zubin.
Well done.
Next, we have a keynote speech delivered by Ahmed Naimi from BIBF about the emergence of technopreneurs in the digital age. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Aziza, for the introduction. It's quite a bit cold here in the hall, right? Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Ahmed Naimi. I'm the head of digital transformation, operations, and project management at the BIBF. I'm going to talk about a very dear subject to my heart, something as I've actually worked throughout my life on, but I've actually moved careers and jobs and all that. Just a bit, I'm just going to run you through my career for a bit in terms of what I've actually done and how it's actually relating to the topic that I'm actually going to talk about today. I started my career actually early on, about 20 years back, in 1999. I started working in this small law firm that actually does immigration cases. So brings in immigration cases, small number, processes them, and executes them. We were about 3 to 4 employees in total. in that office itself, the actual competition started becoming very fierce. So I remember in '99, my boss, who was the lawyer and the CEO of the company, he came in and he said, he gathered all the staff, 3-4 individuals, and said, look, you guys, if we do not make a change in the way that we do business, we're not going to be in business in a few years' time. So what do you think of what we should do? And we started discussing and blah, 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 talking about all the aspects of how we can actually change the perspective in this law firm. We owned a domain name called immigration.ca and said, let's capitalize on this domain name. Let's change the perspective. Let's make a portal, put it online, and see how it goes. We did that. We put that portal online. We did one small change, one innovative aspect that actually changed that industry in Canada, basically, in the immigration business, from that organization, which I'm going to talk about at a later stage. The business now, today as we speak, is a multi-million-dollar business that actually gets about 1 million unique visitors a day to the site. It's a huge business now in Canada. I actually left that company in 2004 when I joined the banking sector. I came to Bahrain and said, I have all this passion about technology and everything, let me bring it to Bahrain and start making a change. I worked in the banking sector for about 10 years. I've worked on the merger of 3 banks. I was the IT team lead for 3 banks. Merging 3 banks together. Then in 2014, I saw that myself more towards the human capital development. I wanted to actually add value to people around me and all that. I wanted to bring programs, technology programs to Bahrain, initiatives. So I joined the BIBF in 2014. For those who do not know the BIBF, it's a 38-year-old institution that is basically governed by the Central Bank of Bahrain. We do about 63, we train in about 63 countries across the world. So either our trainers actually fly out or we get delegations coming to Bahrain. And we offer about 400 plus programs in the Kingdom of Bahrain, which basically focuses on different disciplines, whether banking, Islamic finance, accounting, project management, and now we have the technology arm basically in the BIBF, which in this digital era. Enough I've said about myself and the company. How many startups do we have here today? I just want to see, raise your arms. I just want to know the number of startups that we have in this room. Cool, nice. I know it's a startup event, and I know majority are going to be startups. Just to get to move forward, you guys actually make all the difference in the world. You play a significant role in the economy growth. Everything that we actually work towards in the economy, you make that difference. You actually create the jobs. You create more employment. You play a big role in the economic dynamism, which basically spurs innovation, brings those new ideas, new creative aspects, and at the same time you inject competition, which gives you that aggressive nature in terms of making it happen. And all that, in turn, improves the economy. And you actually shape up industries, shape up the country as a whole. Why I'm saying this? Alibaba, if we see Alibaba and how actually changed the perspective of Hangzhou, they actually created 35 million jobs in Hangzhou itself. We have Microsoft, how actually changed Redmond and created a sort of a small, smart city. At the same time, we have Google, how they actually changed, impacted Mountain View, California. The economy started boosting there. All that, they all share a common factor. Those 3 organizations, or any of those organizations that, tech-based organizations, they share a common factor. They are all entrepreneurs, yes, we know that. They're all entrepreneurs. But one aspect that I actually want to highlight, it's entrepreneurship 2.0. I call it entrepreneurship 2.0 or entrepreneurs 2.0, which in turn leads me to the next topic that we want to talk about, which is technopreneurship. It's no longer, you have all those capabilities in terms of running the business. Of course, you're not going to be where you are if you don't have the entrepreneurial capabilities. But what makes the difference is all those companies that I talked about, they are technopreneurs. What is technopreneurship? Does anyone of you know that? Hands? No? Wow, it's a new terminology, I know that. It's basically a basic formula. So you have entrepreneurship skills, add to it innovation, add to it technology, and you get that technopreneurship aspect. So it's a very basic formula, but it's not that easy to actually achieve or reach to. Now, let's talk about what makes you a technopreneur. One aspect, innovation and creativity. In entrepreneurship, you have to have the skills of entrepreneurship, as I mentioned. However, in entrepreneurship, basically, you are identifying an opportunity, building your business, and you're having a successful business model. And technopreneurship, on the other hand, is you're identifying an idea. You're taking that idea and defying every practice, every system that is existing, and you're adding to it your own mindset. And add to that the helm of technology. So you add that element of technology throughout the process, and you get that technovation that you have. Let's look at Uber. Uber didn't do any rocket science or anything major. All what they did is that they changed the economics of the cab and taxi industry through just embedding a GPS system into their integrated app. As simple as that. Now, going back to my journey as well, in the immigration.ca business, the website that I actually worked on, what is the element that made that company succeed? In early 2000, all what we did on the website is we added this simple form that you see. Very simple form. Just taking the information from people from across the world. We made a major marketing campaign on the website. We marketed, at that time, there was Overture, Demos, AltaVista, all those search engines. And we just added a lot of major campaigns to those search engines prior to Google coming on. And we just marketed that form. We reached the world. So basically, all the information that we took from the form, what we did is we added a small component at the back end, which it's a CRM-based system, which basically takes all the information, processes it, and gives it to the employee ready with all the results and everything of that individual. And that cut down the time of the employee from 20 minutes per case to 20 seconds and 3 clicks. All it took for them to actually answer you back with your qualifications, if you can immigrate to Canada or not. As simple as that. And since that time, to be honest with you, it started growing big. Second aspect I wanted to mention is the reverse mentoring. Every time we look at mentoring, we think of, oh, those experienced guys, the ones that are in the market, the elderly guys, they had a long track of experience. Actually, in technopreneurship, it's quite different. As much as you're going to look at for those experienced individuals that you want advice from, you will actually need to reconsider. You need to look at those guys. The younger generation, the guys that actually are the digital age individuals, the new generation, they are the ones that are going to give you the fresh look. You need to actually challenge your app or your application with the younger generation, at least 10 years younger than yourself. Drive and passion, of course. If you're not passionate about it, I heard Sheikh Hamad a few minutes ago talked on the panel about the passion as well. If you're not passionate about it, no one else will be. So if you're not passionate about what you do, you don't have the drive, no one else will do it for you. You should have that real passion in terms of driving your technology forward. This is basically, I don't know if most of you know, this is the house of Steve Jobs. This is where Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs started Apple from, in the garage. And as we know, Steve Wozniak was here last week, actually. I attended the Euro Money conference. And I saw the passion in this guy. His passion was mostly towards the computer hardware, engineering. Whereas, as we know, Steve Jobs, his passion was more lying towards building tools that unleashes the creativity aspect in individuals. So adding them together, we see the Apple that we see today. Now, if we give a round of applause, actually, for our startups in Bahrain. I'm very proud about a lot of startups that were actually started in Bahrain, and they are actually reaching the world regionally. One GCC, Arawi, Telp actually, who won Mashroui Award just a few days back. I'm actually very passionate about it because they are very passionate about their product. If you see their Instagram, you see their story, they always talk about their projects in a very passionate manner. And that's why they're actually making it happen, and they're reaching the region. Experiment and take risks. Of course, without experimenting, you will not be able to make it. Elon Musk actually failed more than 10 times before actually he thrilled the world. I'm actually going a bit faster because I'm running out of time. Tech savvy. All the elements that I've actually talked about, it will not be possible without embedding technology in each and every stage of the process. In every stage, you will need to add the element of technology, and that's why you're going to be called technopreneurs. So talking about AI, talking about artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, fintech, blockchain, all those elements are very important, crucial for you to actually learn about, get to know them deeply in order for you to actually make that change. So enough said about that. What will you find if you actually search for technopreneur on the net? I had difficulty actually myself in searching on the net and trying to find something about surveys or statistics about technopreneurship. To my astonishment, okay, we know that tech industry started from the US, UK, China, they are leading that. But what I actually found, these three countries, India, Singapore, and Malaysia, those countries, independently of each other, they've actually set a government-led initiatives, funds, invested only on technopreneurs. So basically, the terminology technopreneurship is prevalent in those three countries. And we can see a lot of startups are actually coming out from those countries. They embedded technopreneurship in their school curriculum, their college curriculum. They actually have master's degrees in technopreneurship. It's just incredible that they put a less focus on entrepreneurship and more focus on technopreneurship, which has all the elements of entrepreneurship in it as well. Now, let's not forget Bahrain. Took a while for that to come back on. Let's not forget about Bahrain. Bahrain is doing amazing in terms of this scene, the startup scene. And we've heard His Excellency Khalid Rameih a few minutes ago, where he spoke that we want to be a hub for startups. We're doing a lot. The ecosystem in Bahrain is fabulous. We may not call it technopreneurs or technopreneurship, but we are actually working on this tech scene a lot. All those technologies that we're introducing to the market. The government regulations have been relaxed. Economic support has been provided through Tamkeen and other means of funding. Human capital, His Excellency Khalid Rameih as well last week in Your Money spoke about building a base of coders, of developers in Bahrain, that they want to actually lead the tech industry, similar to what India has done years back. In addition to that, bringing programs like Udacity through the Polytechnique. Now that takes me to the next aspect that I want to talk about very briefly of what the BIBF is doing in that scene as well. Technopreneurship. We are actually launching a technopreneurship program by June this year, which runs either a startup, SME, or those entrepreneurs that want to scale their business to become the next technopreneurs. So we kickstart your tech innovation journey through introducing a number of technologies like IoT, AI, fintech, blockchain, all those technologies separately. We will explain them each and every one individually. Then moving on to design thinking, how you actually can think creatively, innovate the way that you work, and basically put product to market in a very agile perspective. Then going on building your support environment. What are the risks that you're going to face with your business? How you can actually manage the project, how you can manage the people that are working with you. And moving on to the last module, which is basically promoting your tech innovation. All the social media tools that you have and how you actually can utilize them to actually put yourself out there for the region, for the world, and so on, so forth. Just think about it. Who are you in this journey? Just the last note that I actually want to make. Who are you in this journey? Are you part of the 93% followers across the world? Or you want to distinguish yourself? You want to be part of the 7% leaders? You want to be part of the 7% leaders who actually disrupt the economy? So either be distinct or be extinct. Thank you very much. Thanks.
So next we have a panel hosted by Zain talking about diversity in the workplace. And I'm going to hand over the mic to Hadia Fathallah, Executive Director, C5 Accelerate from Bahrain.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Can I invite the rest of the panelists to please join me on stage? So who's first? Can I? Yeah. Good morning. So we are going to be talking about inclusivity in the workplace. And this panel is hosted by Zain and is brought to you by C5's Nebula, which is our Women in Tech initiative. And with me this morning is Wafa Beidat, founder and CEO of Ubay & Hill, Fatma Haider, Ambassador for Diversity for Zain Group, and Lina Alemi, founder and managing partner of Diversity on Board, and last but not least, Tala Fakhro, Executive Director for Market and Strategy Intelligence. So we are going to be talking about why inclusivity is important and what can really be done to make workplaces more balanced and more progressive. So I'll start with you, Fatma. In 2017, Zain launched their Women's Empowerment Network. And the idea was really to help women drive change, but also be part of it. And it was refreshing to see that the initiative was actually launched by the Vice Chairman and Group CEO, Badr Al-Khrafi. And he noted that championing gender diversity at Zain will create competitive differentiation and ultimately improve the company's bottom line. So this is not just about gender diversity, this is actually about better business. So can you tell us a little bit about what you think is the most effective way to really make this case?
I think it starts with, first, hello everyone. I think it starts with having a group of believers in driving a change at the start. And then looking into systems and processes and putting a plan that would make this happen, like implementing and executing the right action plans to take it forward. As a strategy, we have two parts. The first one is we're looking into having a women leadership representation in the company. By 2020, we're aiming to have 25% achieved. And the other part is going through such direction through the three stages of evolution, which is awareness, realization, and then motivation.
So that's great, because from a strategic perspective, it's clear that there's a lot of work that needs to be done from a top-down level to make sure that we have specific KPIs. But Lina, perhaps I'll come to you. Even with all the efforts, still the numbers globally are pretty low. So whether it's how much money is put into investing in female founders or VCs, or how many women are in senior positions. So again, studies do show that organizations become much more productive and much more profitable when they're more diverse. And this is not just gender, this is inclusivity and diversity in general. You've done a lot of work and research in this space. Tell us, why is diversity critical for better businesses?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you brought up that diversity is more than just gender. It's obviously cultural, it's educational diversity, different abilities. And you know, if you are adopting a human-centered or user-centric approach, whether you're a business that's serving customers or whether you are a government that's serving its citizens, it helps to actually have those customers or those citizens represented in your workplace, on your boards, because they can understand the actual needs, the interests, design products and services that really help to you know, enhance your life, whether it's a government service or a product. And there's a lot of really great examples, but one that I love from the social sector is how they were looking at building a school in India, in this rural area, so that girls could go to school. And so they spent all this money, they built this school, and the girls were not going to school. And so they were wondering why, and this is all men, by the way, who built it. And so they were wondering, why are the girls not going to school? And then they realized it's because they can't afford sanitary napkins every month when they're menstruating. So they wouldn't have thought of that as men, but you know, this is just one example of how important it is to actually have people at the table. Aside from the fact that numerous studies show the business benefits, higher shareholder returns, better risk management, and all of those things that I think we're all aware of.
I mean, you highlight that there's a lot of untapped potential if you don't have everyone at the table, so to speak, but also that there might be pain points and problems that you're not seeing, and blind spots that you're not aware of. But I want to segue and ask Tala specifically. You sit on the board of the Bahrain Development Bank, but also the benefit company. Internationally, the numbers when it comes to corporate boards are very, very low when it comes to women's representation. I think it's about 12% globally, and if you look at Fortune 500, it's maybe 15%, and these numbers are barely growing. So can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the challenges getting appointed to boards, but also once you're on that board, what are some of the challenges, and what can we do to address them?
So I think that very often we tend to go with the networks that we know, which is why boards have historically been more male than female. So we need to have a way, since the network doesn't happen automatically, we need to have a way to understand who are the qualified women who could potentially gain access to these boards. And once that information is collated in one place, it's easier to say, okay, fine, there's a database here. Let me select this person because it seems like she has the right qualifications to add value to my board. This is the first point, and I think Lina's done some good work around that with diversity on board and other initiatives. But once you're on the board, let's say you get on this board, you face a lot of challenges. First of all, there's a lot of previous knowledge or previous relationships that you have to navigate around if you're a woman. Sometimes you're coming into the room, you are the only woman in the room. And I think that can be a little bit off-putting for some people. Sometimes you're the only voice of dissent as well. But the thing to remember, and I think the thing that we have to keep reinforcing is that if you don't have diverse people on panels, if you don't have diverse people on boards, you will always hear what you want to hear. It's like the echo chamber reinforces itself. If you're a Fox News watcher, you will only ever hear a pro-Trump message. It's the same on a board which is all the same kind of man who went to the same kind of school, had the same kind of background. And I think you need to shake that up a bit. Otherwise, you'll make mistakes, as Lena was saying. So I think that's...
So I think you bring up a good point that, and Wafa, I'll come to you for this point, that diversity and the lack thereof is often also a factor of, society. It's a factor of cultural assimilation. It's a factor of, as I mentioned earlier, some, blind spots that we have and inherent biases. And in our region, sometimes they can be even more pronounced than other regions. Wafa, can you tell us a little bit about how you account for these realities in your businesses, and what are some of the things you have done to break barriers and make your businesses not just more inclusive, but also more empowering to women?
So,
Here, take this one. I think this is working now.
So, I mean, as a company owner, I think we're predominantly known as a woman-based firm and company, and I'm really proud of that. I think what we try to do internally is we empower women, we put them at the forefront of our work, we give them leadership opportunities, we allow them the space to fail and to try and to make mistakes. And as a collective approach, our agency also launched the Women Power Summit, which I'm really, really proud of. This was the largest congregation of women leaders in one place in MENA. 1,200 women attended. What that told me is there's definitely a gap, and there was a huge space that we needed to fill in terms of getting women to come together, to network, to grow, to get access to mentors, as Talia was saying. The whole language was based around shared experience, so women were very transparent, and they talked about failures. 35% of our attendees, of our 1,200 attendees, were able to find mentors and have access to mentors. 25% of them benefited from the networking. So through the summit and through our initiatives, and I'm really, really proud to be on this stage as well with Lena, because we were able to collaborate on diversity on boards, which she's spearheading, which is an incredible platform, as well as Nebula. And I think these are the platforms that I felt are trying to fill in these gaps in the market.
So let's stay on that point, because I was going to come to that point and talk about initiatives and where doing good and social initiatives are important. So let's stay on that point, but let's actually park that point. I want to ask specifically organizationally. So Zain, as an organization, what can organizations do when accounting for hiring, when accounting for internal practices to make sure that they deal with these biases? And then, Fafa, I'll come back to you because I want to talk actually about your businesses before I segue into Diversity on Board, Nebula, and Women Power Summit. I want to talk about, if you are a senior executive in a business, man or woman alike, what are some of the things you need to account for when you're hiring, when you're structuring your businesses, and when you're setting strategies for greater inclusivity? So, Fatma, perhaps, and Zain?
I believe it starts with having equal opportunities at a start, and then we establish it based on awareness. The first thing to, let's say, prevent unconscious biases or implicit bias, if we can call it that, is to be aware of what you're doing next. I mean, throughout last year, Zain Bahrain, being an industry that it's, let's say, male-dominated, it's too technical. This is what the stereotype is all about. We always took for granted the idea of maybe such technical jobs are more male-dominant, but when it came to selection, it took more time. But with that awareness that we had, we made sure that our HR department, since I'm from HR, to have a clear understanding when it comes to selection. So we tried our best to have a balanced ratio when it comes to screening and selection as well. Before we never saw those figures and facts. from a female or from a gender perspective. But now we speak that language. Like when we address or let's say talk about selection, we speak about that we had a number, like X percentage of males selected and X percentage of females selected. And we might go back to the process in case we've seen that the ratio is not balanced. We would look at that. So yeah, it's all about awareness and having the right conversation. And throughout, I mean, addressing such figures, in fact, we would mention it now. It's part of the system.
And I think that's an important point, is that while having conversations about women's empowerment, it's important to actually sit down and look at the numbers. I mean, that's not to say, and we were having a conversation earlier in the room as we were preparing, that's not to say that women should be put in positions to fill quotas or to make this more of a fad than a business decision. But actually, it is important to sit down and to look at the numbers and to come up with a process. So Lena, perhaps, as Wafa mentioned, you know, Wafa last year launched the Women Power Summit. We launched Nebula, which is a platform that hopes to engage women to break into the tech space, but also to excel in it. And it's refreshing to see a lot of women in the audience, but technology and banking and other sectors remain sectors where there is still an underrepresentation of women. So Lena, you founded Diversity on Board, and perhaps it's more focused on corporate boards, but tell us a little bit about what are some of the measures that can be taken to make sure that, again, when we're being more inclusive, we're doing it in a way that serves business and serves the wider agenda of enablement.
So quotas come up a lot, and I kind of flip-flop on this issue. Sometimes I think quotas are a terrible idea. Other times I think actually in some contexts it's needed. So there's a great illustration that shows the difference between equity and equality. And so when you have equality, it's like giving two people a box to stand on so they can see over a wall. But one of the guys is 6 foot and the other is like 5 foot. So that's equality. You've given them the same thing, but they're starting from two different places. Yeah. So with quotas, you know, again, I'm not sure. I don't want to be so quick to dismiss it. But I think the other things that can be done are, you know, like Fatma said and Zain, it's widening your pool of applicants. So it's saying, okay, it's not that we necessarily will hire people who aren't qualified, but we will at least ensure that we see an equal number of qualified men and women. Another thing that some organizations do is actually completely blind hiring or recruiting. I've seen that happen with innovation grants as well, where they will go through an application process and not know until the final stage what that applicant's gender is, what their nationality is, because that can also play a role. You know, both positive discrimination and negative discrimination. So I think those kind of measures are really important. And then the other thing that I think comes up, which Tala touched on, is, you know, these networks that you know who you know within your own network, and I don't think it's intentional. But one reason that we started Diversity on Board is because a lot of men would say, well, we would hire more women, or we would put more women on the panel, we just don't know any. And, you know, and you think, how could you not know any? But people only know who they know within their own networks. So what we're trying to do with Diversity on Board is at least provide this talent pool that makes it very easy for people to identify. And then, you know, each candidate is judged on their own merit, but at least we can kind of help in providing that source.
On the back of that, before I come to Tala, is there, however, a role, because we have conversations about this before, that you do know who you know, and there are circles, people run, I mean, that's a natural tendency. I will pick the people I know and the people I see most. So is there also a role for women to stand up and put their hand up and say, by the way, you guys are, I heard, looking for board members for this amazing company. Guess what? I'm pretty experienced and have this experience. Because men have a tendency to make themselves known, to get, and again, there are going to be more limited opportunities because of majlises and because of other realities, right? But is there an opportunity to say, actually, hi, and this is my expertise. Wafa, you stood up yesterday and asked the minister a question. You don't shy away from opportunities. Is there a role? Do you want to tell women in the audience a little bit about, you know, put your hand up, step up, and...
So I think just reflecting back on the summit's experience, I think growing up, I realized a lot of my mentors were men. It was very challenging for me to find female mentors who were in business, who were also open to having these discussions with me. It is a very male-dominant area. You know, the whole idea was, when you look around, and in my line of work, a lot of the decision-making is done by men. A lot of the board members are you know, the spots are taken up by men, and you know, we need to also do our part to be present and to be there as well, and find those opportunities. And I think what the summit did is it gave women access, not just to board members, but access to mentors, where you could you know, have these discussions with them all in that one space. And the largest theme in the whole summit has been, how do you navigate obstacles? How do you increase your confidence? How do you take more risk? We didn't have that intentionally, but it kind of weaved through all the sessions. So there is definitely a lot of work that we have to do from our side. But I think when you sit in a room full of women that are talking openly about their failures, their struggles, or when they put their hand up and they fail, or no one kind of listens to them, or what did they do to kind of overcome that, that's when you get inspired to want to reach or to push a little bit harder or lean in.
And there's this concept of leaning in, but also of amplifying. We were at a workshop a few months ago with Teresa Carlson, a VP for Amazon Web Services, public sector, and she was talking about this concept of amplifying, wherein I think it was the Obama administration, there were a lot of women in senior positions, and they often realized that they wouldn't be invited to some of the meetings, or that decisions were being made by the men and they were not included. So they decided to come together and support each other and amplify each other's efforts and go together. So there is a role for women to play to amplify each other's efforts and to hold each other's, I mean, not to sound like cheesy about it, but to say, you know, let's do this together, because you need that kind of role model and ally, but you also need the partnership of men and their alliances. And this can't be a conversation that only happens with women without the men. So Tala, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how men have played a role in shaping your career, and the importance of that partnership.
So I was a banker for 15 years, and it's a very male-dominated society. And not only was I a banker, I was a trader. So that tells you the kind of atmosphere I was in. Having said that, male allies were my mentors, because there were no women in those roles, or very few women in those roles. And the women that were in those roles were so busy trying to catch up to be like the men that they didn't take the time to help me navigate myself. So the people who helped me were actually men. And I think it's crucial to remember that this is not a zero-sum game. Women's gains are not men's losses, and we need to make that message clear. This is good for everybody. This is a win-win situation. This is a win for the company. This is a win for the employee. This is a win for the board, if we have everyone in the room. If you are excluding 50% of your population, you are doing yourself a disservice. And it's not more altruistic than that. It's just common sense. And I think we have to always keep that in mind. We have to beware of being exclusionary, of being, I agree with the amplification that you mentioned. I agree that women need to stick together, and women need to do a better job mentoring each other. Women need to help each other in the same way that men help each other. But we need to do it not to the exclusion of men, but to the inclusion of all, of every race, of every gender, of every culture, because that helps everybody.
If I can just jump in as well, we had a session in the summit called "Do Women Really Support Women in the Workplace?" And studies have actually shown that women don't want a female boss, but men don't also want a female boss. So how are we meant to get more women into influential roles if they're not getting that support? So it is a little bit cheesy, but do we actually tear each other down and get jealous and get frustrated, or are we supporting each other, happy when the other one, gets that promotion and you don't, and having that support or that mentor, you'll be that next person who will get that role. So there is a huge culture change or a shift that we need to also do from our end, which is how do we have each other's backs? And the story about the Obama administration is an excellent one, because they would actually have an agenda and walk in and have each other's back and support each other to get their points across.
Yeah. Dina, you're laughing. I feel like you want to add to this.
No, I love what Tala just said. No, I'm not laughing.
Anything on the amplification or on greater inclusivity?
On amplification, I think I do see actually a lot of women. So one thing is, a lot of women who have made it to the leadership positions, it's common that they say, actually, I was supported by men, because there weren't a lot of women. I was I was moderating a panel a few months ago for a global management consultancy, and it was the same thing with the female partners. They were saying, you know, when I had a baby and moved like to Australia and had to, you know, relocate because of my husband, the partners at the firm, the male partners at the firm actually helped me manage my clients, and they helped me manage the hours, and I wouldn't have, you know, made it had it not been for the men. At the same time, I am seeing this cultural shift, and I am seeing a lot more women, and you know, if social media is a barometer, I see a lot of women on my social media that are kind of amplifying other women and saying, I'm so proud of so-and-so for doing, you know, XYZ, for winning an award, for launching this. And that's really great to see, because we don't, you know, I didn't used to see that 5 years ago, where we celebrate each other's successes and actually amplify and are genuinely proud and happy to share.
Just to be slightly controversial, is there a risk that we're lowering the bar? Is there a risk that if we're celebrating everything, and sometimes we're celebrating empowerment a bit too much, is that we're lowering the bar, and we're not, you know, encouraging women to compete with each other and with the men, to make sure that when they do get that seat, they can actually, because I always say, look, don't give me a seat at the table because I'm a woman. Give me a seat because I'm the best person. And if I do well, take me to the bigger table, and then take me to the bigger table, and then the biggest table. Don't not take me to the biggest table if I genuinely got there by merit. So is there a risk, and I'm just throwing this out there, there's no right or wrong answer, is there a risk that we're lowering the bar and making it easy to celebrate achievements when we're celebrating mediocrity?
I think to some extent there is that perception that there might be this dumbing down, if you will, of things. But I want to throw something else out, which is that the culture has changed. If you look at the way that Gen X is versus the millennials, Gen X is all about competition, right? So you're always going to beat the next person. I think this generation, and maybe it's a reaction to the technical revolution, but we're really seeing a lot more value being placed on collaboration and teamwork than has been the case in the past. And in a team, you can't be a superstar. If you have a team full of superstars, you don't have something that works. So I think that the culture is shifting as well.
That's good. I'm conscious of time. We have 1 minute, so I'm going to give you each 20 seconds to give one inspirational piece on how to become a good advocate as a woman.
I think we all have a responsibility to open up our lives and be transparent and talk about our failures and the challenges. Too many people, you know, hide behind this facade of, you know, everything looks great, and not just that, but they're quite private. So I think let's reinforce knowledge sharing by women for women.
Thank you. Fatma?
And just to elaborate on what my sister just said, I think it's all about partnership rather than working. I think we need to work together rather than working against each other. It's not men versus women. It's basically a partnership where if we work together, like preventing gender on one, putting it just on one side, it would make a difference in the business.
Lena?
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, to advance women's, and I don't like to use the word women's empowerment, because I think actually women are pretty empowered. It's the environment that's a little bit broken. But I think that you need to be inclusive in an all-encompassing way. So if you're going to be inclusive, it's not just women, it's men as well. Google recently
Thank you.
just
I'm going to have to jump, sorry, because I can see this huge thing glaring saying time's up, so the risk of getting kicked off stage, Tala.
I would say never stop learning and never stop trying. That would be my word of advice.
Thank you, Tala, Lena, Fatma, and Wafa, and thank you all. Thank you to Zain for being so forward-thinking as an organization, and to Unbound for their organization, and obviously to C5 Nebula as well for pulling this together. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hadia. And now, keynote from Bahrain Airport Company by the CE, Mohammed Yusuf bin Falah from Bahrain Airport Company.
Shukran. Thank you.
I think technically it is still morning, so good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for Unbound Bahrain for providing me with the opportunity to talk about Bahrain Airport Company first, and then about the airport modernization program. So Bahrain Airport Company is quite a young organization. By industry standards, we are one of the youngest airport operators in the region. We were incorporated back in 2008, and the actual transfer of the business from the civil aviation to the company took place in 2010. We were very fortunate enough in 2013 to be given the privilege of representing the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication in managing one of the most ambitious programs in the civil aviation industry in the kingdom. We are young also in terms of talent. So today, I think by raising your hands, you can see that we are participating with more than 100 of our staff. Big number of them are young talent that we have recruited over the last few years. So when the project started in 2013, and even before we appointed the design consultant in January 2014, we started recruiting young talent from local universities. And the idea was very simple. We wanted everyone to gain the opportunity of learning the development of projects like this directly from the experts, the consultants, and the contractors. As you know, developing an airport is not an everyday event. You are very lucky if you happen to be involved in the development of a terminal building. So most of these guys and girls have been with the project since day one. They continue to be involved with the project team. And having them here is the beginning for them of another journey, in my opinion. We'll talk about that some later on. We come to the project, and I think now I will show you a video for an update on the construction program. Thank you. So the project, we started this ambitious development back in 2013. During the Bahrain International Air Show in 2014, we appointed the first two consultants. It is quite an accelerated project, one of the fastest in the region, if you benchmark us against other airport developments. In April 2016, the main contractor was appointed to the site. Today, we are going to finish almost 3 years of construction activities. We are at a very advanced stage of construction, as you can see from this. This is a few months old, so it doesn't represent the most update on the construction status. The project is costing us, just for the terminal building and the associated facilities, around $1.1 billion. It is the size of the terminal building is 4 times the size of the existing one, for those of you who are familiar with it. It is being built to the east of the existing one, in very close proximity to most of the daily operations. So it has been a challenge in terms of safety and security to implement a project like this in a live airport. The project, the terminal building service level is being designed up to IATA's level of service B, which is quite high when it comes to queuing and waiting times to process passengers. It is also a very environmentally friendly building. It will be certified to LEED Gold certificate, and probably it will be the biggest built environment on the island with this certification. We have come a long way since the appointment of the consultants and contractors. The plan is to go live towards the end of Q3 this year. The project consists of 2 phases. Phase 1 will finish this year, while Phase 2 will involve demolishing part of the existing terminal, and it will be taken up next year. Part of the project, and this is where I think we are interested to be here today, is the ICT platform. So we are investing in something around 25 systems. These are solutions that have to do with operational activities at the terminal, as well as safety, security, and life systems. These systems are going to be integrated globally, so they talk to each other at a global level. They are also interfaced to external solutions. So we interface with air traffic management, with the ground movement radars. We also interface with ERP solution as well. So it is quite a complex ecosystem. It exists both in-premise as well as in the cloud. So it is a hybrid solution, limited also by the fact that some of the airport operating systems from a technology perspective are not yet available in the cloud. We are currently working on operational trials. So for those of you not familiar with operational trials, airport projects have failed in the past because project teams have not prepared to open up the facilities and to take the measures that allow them to transfer seamlessly from one location to another. This practice has become now mature in the industry, and very soon we are starting operational trials. We are also starting the training of a huge number of our staff on new systems. In fact, yesterday we successfully launched the first contractor training course at site on some of the IT solutions. The next theme that I would like to talk about is airports and innovation. So in today's world, airports cannot operate without technology. Airports used to be very heavy asset and infrastructure enterprises. Today, they are highly driven by technology solutions. And this has evolved over a number of years, mainly also driven by passenger expectations. So today's passengers, in some instances, carry more than one mobile, expect a lot. In the past, the passenger experience used to be limited to the boundary of the airport and mainly inside the terminal building. Nowadays, passengers expect their journey and the services they receive to start even outside the airport. So if you are at home about to start your journey, you expect to receive updates on your flights, on the weather, on whether your flight is going to be on time or delayed. When you reach the airport, you also expect certain digital information to be streaming to you. So all of this have driven airports to set up innovation ecosystems. Three prominent airports that can be cited here are Munich in Germany, ADB in France, which is the operator of a number of French airports, and Changi in Singapore. And each one of them has developed his own concept of innovation lab. So in Singapore, it is a virtual environment. There is nothing physical. While in Munich and ADBI, which is the Charles de Gaulle airport, they have a physical lab where they test ideas, concepts, they engage with the startups, with the industry at large to develop solutions both for the airport as well as for the passengers. So this is where the industry is moving within the airport industry. This is where we at BAC would like to be. And this is why we are here. We are here because we believe that we are at the beginning of an exciting journey. A journey that, to be frank with you, I don't know where will it take us, but I know it will be very interesting, particularly when you have a young talent organization. We need, through this participation, to create, in my opinion, the right organizational culture, because that's the fundamental element or factor to make a shift at any organization to embrace innovation. Without that cultural and mindset development within the organization, I think there is a barrier between what's happening outside and what can benefit any organization, whether it is an airport operator, a financial institute, or otherwise. And if you look at some of the airports around the world, you find that in most cases, they are reactive. They react because there is something happening outside, and they need to catch up in order to stay abreast with the development of the industry. In our case, we are in this region the underdogs. We are the smallest hub in the region. And I think going back to what Khalid mentioned earlier about being small and beautiful, I think it gives us a lot of competitive advantages because we are agile. We can take decisions much faster than bigger organizations that you find the decision making very difficult to move. So this is exciting time for us. It's exciting time for the aviation sector in Bahrain. We are working very closely with our partners. We believe that this event here will give us the beginning of something that we will be benefiting from as we move forward with this airport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. We were so delighted to host the, sorry?
Yes.
No questions, don't worry. So, yeah, we were very happy. The BAC has hosted an innovation day yesterday at their offices. Also, I'd like to make an announcement. The lunch will be served for the BAC at the National at the museum at 12:30. Thank you so much. Next, Temkeen. Let's hear from Temkeen. Safa Abdel Khaliq, Director of Investment, will talk about innovation.
Thank you. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Economic Development Board and the partners for putting together this amazing event, for bringing this award-winning festival to Bahrain, and which really, as a matter of fact, is a testament of Bahrain's drive towards and commitment towards driving innovation and a digital future in the MENA region. And I'd also like to thank you for attending, for participating, for not going to lunch and being with me here to hear my session, so thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I had come with a scripted speech, but then looking at the vibe of the participants and the energy while I was interacting with them, I decided to just not look at the paper, refer to it, but speak my heart out. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I stand here in front of you feeling very proud. I feel very inspired to see what Bahrain has achieved, to see what we are currently offering, what we are providing the businesses in order to create the right ecosystem to thrive innovation. I'm very proud to see that all the ecosystem players are actually gathered here under one roof to nurture the ecosystem, which will in turn support us to achieve our objectives, which will support us in contributing to the national development, which most importantly also support in helping Bahrainis to compete head-to-head with their peers, not only in Bahrain, but even in the region and on an international level, and also supporting them to contribute within the global ecosystem. And for those of you who know Temkeen, the startups represent a very critical part and a primary interest to the organization, specifically because Temkeen is all about investing in the future. It's about investing in the most important segments, which are individuals and businesses at all stages, starting from ideation up to the matured businesses. And we do that by continuously collaborating with our partners to come up with new and effective tools and support mechanisms that would support them, that would help them to achieve their progression plans, to achieve their objectives, be it tapping into new markets, a diversification, be it to come up with a new concept, with testing new ideas. And we do that through providing several support solutions, be it financing, be it grants, or the non-financing support solutions such as advisory, mentorship, and coaching. One of the key mandates of Temkeen, ladies and gentlemen, is about enhancing and promoting the private sector to be the main engine of growth of the economy. And in line with our mandate, startups have actually supported the organization providing and opening a highly competitive and impenetrable job market. As a matter of fact, this has created a lot of job opportunities and driving entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. And I have to say very proudly that Bahrain's entrepreneurial ecosystem has undergone major transformation over the course of the years. The transformation towards becoming dynamic, digitech, and innovative-based economy, which is driven by a rich ecosystem players, be it accelerators, incubators, the mentorship platforms, funding agencies. And this transformation that we are talking about has actually placed Bahrain, in my opinion, as one of the leaders in the Middle East and North Africa regions, as being one of the most forward-thinking economies, one of the most flexible, one of the most dynamic economies, which is driven by innovation, where innovation being the main theme of our event today has been the cornerstone of such a transformation. So we at Timkeen constantly look towards developing new and innovative support solutions to support the ecosystem and provide them with making sure that companies are actually thriving on technology, diversification, productivity, and competitiveness. And we do that by providing low financing. We do that by providing grants to acquire technology, to acquire marketing support. We provide exporting solutions and many multitude of support solutions. As a matter of fact, if any business now comes to Timkeen, they could be supported at any stage. They will have an area of support solution that could actually be customized for them to make sure that they are profit-making business going forward. We work together with them to make sure that they actually reach a desired state that they would want to reach to. We not only support businesses that are located in Bahrain, we also support those who are willing to invest in Bahrain and those who are actually willing to transcend the borders and diversify. So we work together with them to make sure that they have actually, realized their ideas and concepts. And I'm very delighted that this event, the Unbound event, is actually happening in Bahrain because it's a platform that brings together all the ecosystem players where you discuss the recent policies, new ideas, we get to know your challenges and your requirements. And I'm very delighted to take the opportunity to announce two main flagship programs that's actually happening in March and April. The first one is the Pitch at the Palace. Pitch at the Palace is basically a global initiative that is set up by His Royal Highness, the Duke of York. Basically, this initiative is to support entrepreneurs and provide them with the platform on an international level. So Bahrain Pitch at the Palace version, this is the second version. The applications are open now for your participation. It's going to happen by the end of the month, inshallah. I'm really looking forward to see participants from Bahrain so that we could see the Bahraini presence on a global platform. So basically, the applicants will be competing first on a national level, and then the winners will be competing at Pitch at the Palace GCC, which will again happen in Bahrain in October. And the winner of Pitch at the Palace GCC will be competing in the Pitch at the Palace Global that's happening in St. James Palace in December in London. And the second most flagship event that's happening in Bahrain in April is the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, which Bahrain is proudly hosting from 15th up to the 18th of April 2019. So the Global Entrepreneurship Congress is a product of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. And so this network has chapters across 170 countries, which provides a platform and gathers the startup champions across the world to discuss new trends, new policies, new researchers, new programs and initiatives that had actually had an impact on the ecosystems outside and develop a roadmap together as to how we can actually bring and implement those programs with high impact and make sure that we actually benefit from it. The GEC 2019 revolves around three main themes, which are basically inclusive economies powered by innovation, high-performance ecosystem, and global ecosystem revolution. There's going to be live sessions revolving around 100 plus parallel sessions, workshops. There's going to be headliners speaking at the event. There's going to be access to investors. So I really encourage you to participate, to register. All the information is actually up on the website, www.gec.co. Once again, I would like to thank you. We are here to get to hear your insights, your feedback, your challenges, and how we could actually support you going forward. Thank you very much, and I really am anticipating that you have had a very remarkable and a fruitful experience in Unbound. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Safa. Next, well, women have big role in everything, and innovation is no exception. Next, we're going to talk about building women empowerment from concept to realization, and I give the floor to Tamara Pupik, the Managing Editor of Entrepreneur ME in the UAE. Tamara, welcome.
We follow? Oops. Oops. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Is it fixed? Okay. Okay.
One more panelist is coming. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's just take a seat. I am Tamara Pupik, managing editor of Entrepreneur Middle East magazine, and I am glad to welcome you all to what I hope will be a very interesting discussion about the state of women's empowerment in this region. We at Entrepreneur are really glad to support this event and many other initiatives of Bahrain Economic Development Board. So many thanks to them and to the Unbound team to invite us, and it's my honor to be here, and it is my honor to share the stage with these three fantastic women. We agreed that I won't go into many details from their bios, because I'm sure you know about so many things they've done to support other women and to support entrepreneurs in the region. But just quickly, Amal Dohan, Director of Babson Global Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, Sarah Mohammed Galeb, Head of Business Incubation at Saudi Aramco Entrepreneurship Center, and Mariam Majed, Manager of Digital Transformation at BIBF.
Yeah,
I apologize. So let's start with an overview of the current state of women's empowerment in this region. From one side, we've been witnessing an extraordinary cultural moment in Saudi Arabia, with His Highness Crown Prince Salman launching many programs and initiatives to support women, the latest being the appointing their first female ambassador to the United States. On the other side, we have countries such as Bahrain, such as UAE, where women have traditionally been considered empowered and equal members of the society and contributing to their national economies as much as men. So what is the real situation on the ground when it comes to the business world, both corporate and entrepreneurship? What would you say? What's really happening if you put aside all those news headlines, mimes included? Shall we start with you?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tamar, for this opportunity, and the Unbound team and Bahrain in general, just for hosting us here. We appreciate the opportunity to give this, this very important critical perspective. So I will give you a very interesting view. I first came to Saudi about 5 years ago, and I was a senior GM for Abdul Latif Jamil. And one of the programs that we worked on was Babris Jamil. And this particular program, I'm sure you've heard of it, it's a household name in Saudi, and they really do support, you know, job creation through recruitment as well as through entrepreneurship. And one of the interesting things that I learned is that, you know, policy is absolutely infecting and affecting what's happening on ground. So one of the roles that I had was to deliver, you know, just an overview of the numbers. You know, numbers don't lie, and the numbers were showing how many jobs were created. And I remember around 2011, 2012, when I got to that chart, it was my favorite part, because that's when we literally saw a double of the numbers. And everyone always asked, you know, Doctora, wait a minute, what is that? That is when the king issued a royal decree for women to enter the retail force. Double. That means that they were waiting for the opportunity. They're waiting for the opportunity, and the job applications, the flood of job applications came in, and it was exciting to be part of that. You know, fast forward to actually 2 years ago with Emma. Do you remember when we were in Riyadh together? I was a judge at 9/10, this amazing program that Emma put on, and top 3 winners were Saudi female teams. It's phenomenal what's happening. And just you know, a couple months ago, this is my favorite of all times. So a couple months ago, Aramco Wide, we put on our very first flagship hackathon. And one of the criteria is that, you know, you have to have a tech background. So, you know, it's a hackathon, so you've got programmers, developers, and you've got, you know, just a phenomenal mix of just really cool tech-based individuals. And we had over 1,000 applications to participate in the first weekend. 80% of the applicants were female. Thank you.
That was
Thank
wonderful.
you. Can we hear the applause?
I love that. How can I beat the 80% you don't know
Seriously,
over
no,
here?
because it's happening. It absolutely
Well,
is.
that's
Amal, well done. That's
Yeah.
just one of the things that you've done, but tell us about
Yeah.
other stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, I would just say at the beginning, I mean, it is definitely some of the most interesting times, you know, especially being in the entrepreneurship and innovation scene for quite some time. And one of the things that we always, and I also work on corporate innovation and transformation as well, and there was always that topic of how might we include more women? How can we really push more women to the leadership, you know, positions? How can we give them a voice on the table? How can we have more startups that are led by women? And as Sarah mentioned over here, today, every program that we announce, we see that more than 50 or 60% of the applicants are women. So I think the transformation that you were talking about and the disruption that's happening in Saudi Arabia, you know, it was actually given that okay, you know, sort of like support, right? When the vision gave most of its points, you know, and most of the topics that was actually tackled, it was tackling women issues. When it comes to legislations, you know, when it comes to law, when it comes to so many elements. So the beauty of the vision that it did not just say women at the workplace. It actually said, if I enable you from the low perspective, if I enable you from the psychological perspective, if I enable you from the life perspective, and you're inclusive within the work, then I will be able to give you the path, and I will be able to let you be. So I think what the vision did, it gave the women that entitlement, you know? So you've got the early leaders, you've got the early ones that started and led the way, right? Women, entrepreneurs, CEOs, you've got them long time ago, both in Bahrain and in Saudi. And I've met a lot of amazing women that are in leadership long time ago. And I think when the authority came and the government came and said, you know, this is your floor, you're needed here, you're needed here. It was that point where it said to everybody, it's your time to actually shine. Then the women actually went through, right? They're already doing it. But today we see a bigger number, and I think that's what we needed. It's the mental assurance that we are needed and we do have a space, and our talents are as equal as the men. And when I do all of these gender inclusive kind of talks, and I say, we need the men, because if the men enable the women, then the women will be able to work. So I do actually commend every man in a leadership position who opened the path and let them shine and gave them the path and the talents, you know, to show forward. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, in general, it's very exciting times. Majority of Saudi is actually youth. So they actually adapt really faster, right? So we're talking about, you know, 80% of the whole population that are considered youth. So that's why we see that the changes that are happening really quickly is positive. Youth don't have patience for us to talk at them all the time. Open the door and tell them to do it. They go ahead and they would do it. We're amazed. School students starting companies, we haven't seen that before. University students, women inside the corporate place starting initiatives, right? In the government as well. So I think this is it. It's the blessing that was given, and it gave that, you know, door to be open, you know, for all of them. So we'll see more and more in the coming few years as well.
Exciting times, very exciting.
Very exciting times.
Mariam, about Bahrain? And
I think it's very exciting what's happening in Saudi and the region as a whole. Talking about Bahrain specific, I think Bahrain is a pioneer when it comes to women empowerment. Since back in the 1920s, where the first school for girls in the GCC region has opened in Bahrain. And since then, we've got many initiatives that took place related to women empowerment. A couple of the major accomplishments in 2001 was the establishment of the Supreme Council for Women, led by Her Royal Highness Sheikh Al Khalifa. The initiatives that the council provide, it's not at a national level only, but even at an international level. And the latest accomplishment that just happened at the latest elections in 2018 were the first time in Bahrain. I'm proud to say that a Bahraini woman was selected to be the speaker for the Council of Representatives for the first time in the region.
Beautiful.
Actually, it's the second time in the region after the UAE and first time in Bahrain.
That's very nice.
So at a national level, we're seeing lots of improvements, lots of initiatives taking place. If I talk about the business world in specific, talking about corporations, today in the government sector, almost half of the employees in the government sector are Bahraini women, around 48%.
and 32% of women in the private sector are women. I'm happy to be working in an organization where 60% of the faculty members and management members are women. And the students who study with us, like the latest statistics are around 40% of our learners are women. So we see more and more women in leading positions and in every sector, in every field. Similarly with entrepreneurship, today most of the business owners in Bahrain are women, and that is thanks to the great and amazing ecosystem we have here in Bahrain, whether it's from providing financial scheme support or incubators, accelerators, and training programs. So as an introduction, I think we have the right foundation here in Bahrain to enable businesswomen, not just Bahraini women, but also anyone who can start up their business here in Bahrain. Yeah. Thank you. This is how I think we come to the main challenge, because when it comes to the barriers to success, once the government opens the door and really empowers, then we are on our own. Then you have to face your own fears, right? And you don't have any more excuses that something has happened. So women often state either some kind of pressures from the society, such as family pressures, or all kinds of these new terms that have been coined to describe a certain type of behavior in the workplace, usually by men, sadly, such as bro-appropriated, man-interrupted, the workplace double-bind. So social pressures from one side, or self-imposed restrictions on the other side, such as the imposter syndrome, procrastination, playing it small, perfectionism even. I mean, this applies globally, but let's talk about this region. So which of the two has been a bigger obstacle for you, and what do you see among women around you?
I think that in order for us to keep moving forward, we do absolutely have to address, the obstacles, unfortunately, that are in our paths. It's how we grow. And, I'll give you a perspective from, our lady entrepreneurs. I have, alhamdulillah, I feel blessed that I have, trained thousands of ladies since I first came here years ago to introduce the concept of social entrepreneurship to the kingdom under a women's empowerment program through Hillary Clinton. And, one of the things that I do before my trainings until now, I do a pre-assessment. When you're training, you're offering a service, right? So you need to be able to understand, some of the challenges that they're having and making sure that they're getting everything that they can out of the training. And so one of the questions that I always ask is, what is your biggest challenge to starting your company? What is in your way? And I always divide, the males and females, when I do have the two, because, for stats, you have to put in your demographics. So by far, the top two, and it hasn't changed over the last, 7 or 8 years since I've been doing this in Saudi, the top two issues that our ladies face are lack of support and their lack of confidence in their skills.
Lack of the support from whom?
Lack of family support. So these are the two issues that I see over and over and over again. So what does that tell me as a trainer? That tells me that we need to do more work in our communities. I think that our ladies, we've been told for so many, no. Now everyone's finally saying yes, yes, yes. But now we're not confident, and we're not sure, do we have the skills? Are we going to make it? So one of the things that I do is I always start my trainings, to reflect. Look at where you've been so that you know where you're going. Look at the strength, find your inner geniuses by identifying what challenges you have and how you overcame them. It's critical to be able to build that confidence. Last week, for example, Badir and the Sharqiya Chamber, they had the Women in Technology boot camp program. Phenomenal. 52 ladies got together. They went through a grueling, 5-day program. It was offered, Maram Al-Jishi and Sally Mahfoud, they did an incredible job. So at the end of it, okay, then what? What do we do? How do we sustain what it is that we're doing? We need to build skills. We need to create more programs. We need to be able to give them a platform to engage, to chat, to get that level of confidence in both areas so that we can see them. And actually, it was great because here backstage, we already started having conversations. How can we utilize our skills, our strengths to be able to work together? Even, we're here at Unbound. There's no boundaries anymore. We're breaking those down. This is an opportunity for Saudi and Bahrain to use our resources together to handle the same issues.
Thank you for pointing that out. So there are family pressures. So we all read these big headlines, but on the ground, this is what's happening. They state family pressures and they state lack of confidence. So if you don't mind that we expand on that, and I know that Amal, you have a lot of experience and you've been helping people. Yeah, I mean, if we look at the two, now you always have the family and all of these issues, and then you have the internal one. I look at it a little bit differently, honestly. I think this is not a women problem. It's for us, this is a general problem that everybody might actually go through, especially entrepreneurs, right? Which is the acceptance of everything new, right? So changing from what I know, changing from the norms into something that's completely new is one of the problems that everybody faces, all humanity actually faces, right? And the worry actually of fear of failure. Again, no matter how we speak about, success stories and all of that, nobody wants to fail. Trust me, I don't want to fail. I teach about that. But we try to make people understand more about failure and fear. It's part of the journey. You're going to have to go through it. No matter what you do, you're going to fail a little bit, small failures, but it's going to make you stronger. So I think part of it, if I were to look into, is it the social one or is it the internal one? It is definitely working ourselves from the inside. We need to train ourselves from the inside to accept the unknown, to accept new experiences, to do things we've never done before. Even when we talk about corporate innovation, the biggest problem with corporate changes, is not accepting what's new. I know my numbers are dropping, but I only understand numbers, right? I know that if I changed into something new, maybe, but I know this better, so I would rather stay here until things fall apart, right? So it's the same for anybody, and it's the same for women empowerment. What is empowerment? Giving ourselves the ground rule that I'm able, I'm capable, and everybody around me is giving me, the roles and the responsibilities the same way like everybody else. And eventually I will be empowered. That's how you get empowered. But if it didn't start from the inside, nobody will give it to you. So sometimes they say, it's like, are you asking women to empower themselves? Yes. Start by yourself. Every successful woman, success story around the world have started with women that have changed the boundaries, right? That have changed everything and maybe opened the doors for other men as well. There's one last thing that I will close with. Babson has a program. It's an accelerated program for women only. Yeah. And when I went there and I said, we're trying to put them together and you're trying to separate them and put women alone, right, in an accelerator. She said, my dear, women are women every day. We need that psychological support. We need the other women that I know I can talk to them from time to time, right? And know that she'll support me as well. So they focus on psychological, training, mental training, social training, and then I will put them in front of investors and I will put them in front of regular networks. But at the same time, it all starts from here, which is changing the mindset. So if we don't change our own mindset, no empowerment facilities or empowerment rules or regulations will actually get us from where we are. So that's how I think of it. It's actually inside the head,
I agree with you, Amal. What we need to look into is the self-imposed restrictions.
Exactly.
But
we need the other
we
ecosystem
need
as well.
And both challenges are connected. So because of family, culture, society, it's led to women having self-imposed restrictions on themselves, thinking that they are not good enough for the opportunity or playing it small.
You're right.
But what we need to focus on are these self-imposed restrictions.
But how do we change them?
Because this is what we can manage and what we can control. How we change them, it comes from each woman herself. So women empowerment, what we mean by women empowerment, it's not that we will give more opportunities for women only.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
It's just that because of the cultural and the society effect, we want to empower women to be able to take the step herself.
Yes. And we will not be able to do that unless the woman actually go for the opportunity and take the opportunity that is suitable for her.
And you're absolutely right, and that's why there's early ones that have started this. But at the same time, when we say that the government is enabling roads, the places is actually giving you more opportunities. So you see that, I will go now.
Exactly.
So some of us like to push the boundaries and fight and change, right? And we don't mind doing this because we know that this is part of the journey. Others want to see what are the doors available, and that's absolutely okay. There's no harm. And a lot of women have proved that by their success, they changed the family norms. When they succeeded, the family started supporting, them. Other families, our neighbor did that, so it's okay for my daughter to get out of the house and to go and do a company. So we need to set all of that cycle of it's all right to do this, but we need also the belief from within side that I can do it. Because if you don't give your mental and psychological, flexibility, if it's not there, you're not going to be able to do it anywhere else.
It's been a while that I noticed that the questions that we ask on these kind of panels don't apply anymore. When you don't have any more barriers coming from the outside, when you have really the government supporting you, then you don't have an excuse anymore. So what are we going to do? We don't have much time left, so let's combine the last two questions that we planned. If we were to advise first business leaders today what to do to empower women more, for example, describe one measure that you think is crucial, and the second thing, to advise other women how to deal with this internal issue. So if we were to provide a conclusion, 2 measures each, one external, the other internal, for our governments and our societies and for women themselves.
Okay, wow. I actually have a very, a perspective that I am seeing, unfortunately, that I think is really important, actually, because I have an opportunity to meet all these amazing women, and I have an opportunity to really work with and engage with some awesome ladies. We're now CEOs, we're directors, we're becoming this generation of firsts in Saudi, which is phenomenal. We've got game changers, we've got all this great stuff happening. And one thing that I'm seeing is competition. And for me, this is just insane. And I can't imagine. So the one thing I want to leave today with is it shouldn't be a competition. Amma and I have worked together, for years. And any opportunity I have, her style is different than me. We're both trainers. I love watching her. I love to support her any way that I can. And the one thing that I want to do is, if you didn't have that support system growing up, be that for someone else. If you are up there, it shouldn't be a competition, ladies, for those of you that are up there. Instead of being a competition, it should be, here, honey, let me hold your handbag while you're climbing up that ladder and fix your hijab because your crown is falling.
Bravo. Very good applause.
Well done, my dear.
Quickly, 2 words for decision makers. 2 words only.
Decision makers, look, I did policy work and influence in the Department of Education back in DC for years. You influence policy and you create policy through doing. Everything that you see that's changed in Saudi is the result of ladies who have done the driving thing.
So share success stories, right?
So yeah. Absolutely, and go out there, do it, be active, go into your community, develop, training programs, see what you can offer as a resource. And by doing more, that will absolutely catch the eye and say, wait a minute, we do have talent, we do, time's up. That was a big red.
Amal,
sorry.
All right, so from an ecosystem perspective, coming from an education background, doing all of these training, I think establishing that sort of education early on is important. And when we teach entrepreneurship, it's not about establishing companies, it's about that empowerment that we all speak about. If you think in an entrepreneurial way, you're able to come up with new things, you're able to accept new things, you're able to do a lot, that is good for you and good for the society and impact others in a much better way. So I think in the heart of the education, these are the beliefs that needs to be instilled early on. So we don't need to do the measures today after 20, 30 years. What can we do to change that? So why don't we really embed all of these stuff, within certain educational system? And we see a lot of a lot of measures that are done in Saudi today to put that sort of thing. Final thing for women, I would say, it's all about the mindset, whether we want to make it or not. Yes, there's people around us, there's societies and all of that, but just basically it's the power of what we can make happen. If you see it, you'll actually make it. So, yeah,
Mariam,
handing it over to you.
2 words, please.
So for the business leaders, I would say it's about fairness. To set a policy and implement a policy of fairness across all business operations. It's not about employing more women or meeting a certain number of quota. It's about providing a fair opportunity for the most capable person, whether it's a man or a woman, to get that opportunity. And for women, I actually had 3 advices, but I'll just say one. I'll just say one. It sounds simple, but it's actually what it takes to be there. It's just to start and make the step forward, because men and women need to try, fail, succeed until they make it. And if you don't make that step, no one else will make it for you.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Taken a little bit of more your time, but it's 4 women on stage. Thank you so much to Bahrain Economic Development Board and to the Unbound team, and I'm sure you will enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, wonderful speakers and ladies.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara, and thank you, our speakers. That was an
you.
interesting session. Next, thank you. Next, we talk about building the next great fintech. This comes to you by Credimax, and we would like to thank Mr. Yusuf Ali Mirza, who's going to be talking on the panel as well. So please join me, Nabila Anwar, the editor of CPI Finance from the UAE. Enjoy.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Seems like everybody's gone out for lunch.
Yes.
So let's keep it nice and cozy. All right. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about building the next great fintech. We'll just go around, get the esteemed panelists to introduce themselves before we start.
Okay, hi, my name is Robin Lee. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hello Gold. Hello Gold is essentially trying to build what I loosely call the BlackRock for the underserved and the unbanked in emerging markets. And because we're looking for customers in the emerging markets, we decided from the very get-go that we would be Sharia compliant, because if you want to be financially inclusive, you should not exclude any segments of society. We've been in business since April 2017. We've been live in Malaysia. We have 70,000 customers, and we've just launched in Thailand this year, and we plan to launch in the Middle East and Africa later on in the year.
Okay.
Yeah. My name is Wajiha Awad. I'm from Al Baraka Banking Group. I'm responsible for digital banking, fintech, and the entire digital transformation. The bank is one of the largest Islamic banks globally. We exist across Africa, Europe, and Asia. I think that's all from my side.
Hello. Hi, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yusuf Ali Mirza. I'm the CEO of Credimax. Credimax is a company specialized in card issuance and acquiring from a merchant side. We've been in business over 20 years, and we have a significant approach towards embracing customer experience by providing the best quality service in Bahrain.
Bhaskar?
Hi, my name is Bhaskar, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of We Invest. We are a B2B2C fintech, and what we do is we enable digital wealth as a business model for banks, asset managers, and brokers across Asia and the Middle East.
All right, so when we talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, and startups, one thing that obviously can't be ignored is financial technology. In 2018 itself, we've basically seen different numbers, 55 billion invested in fintech, or Gia is telling me that it's 111 billion, according to KPMG. So this is obviously an area that can't be ignored. However, if you go to things like this, events like these, like investor days and stuff, you keep on seeing sort of similar startups presenting their products and solutions, such as payment solutions, investment management, investment analytics. So what we're going to talk about today is how do you actually build a great fintech? What does that require? And what sort of external and internal factors that makes a fintech a great fintech? So let's start off by having our esteemed panelists define what they think a great fintech is. Perhaps Robin, you'd like to start.
Well, I think you got to start with the problem, right? The problem that you're trying to solve, whether it's on a B2B level or whether it's on a B2C. And certainly for us, we identified from the get-go a fundamental problem around the world, which is that for most people, whether they're unbanked or underserved, they do not have the ability to save towards a better financial future, either because the products aren't accessible to them at the price points that they have, or the challenges of convenience becomes a huge problem. And coupled with that, the inability to get access to liquidity, because the other issue that a lot of people face is they have to save, but bad things happen to them. Their fridge breaks down, their motorcycle breaks down, and they have to break into their savings to fix that, whilst all these problems are actually solved for the rich. If you're a rich person, you have the ability to get financing from your investment portfolio. So for us, we took that as the fundamental building block to build a solution to address these problems for our target market.
So, all right, so then from a banking perspective, what do you think? I mean, obviously you'd like to either have financial technology built in-house or partner with a fintech. So what do you think makes a great fintech from your point of view?
I think it really depends on which market you're talking about. So it really differs the strategy from a market to another. For example, in Turkey, we have our own incubator and accelerator where we deal directly with fintechs. And I think, back to your question, is that it's a very simple answer. It's either a problem that you solve or it's an opportunity that you tap into it. So if you fall in one of these categories, then you are really building a great fintech, I think.
And from your point of view as a Khoikhoi?
From my point of view, a great fintech that addresses the needs of the customer and bridges the gap between the consumer and the financial institutions when it comes to banking and financial institutions. There must be a proper business case where there is a purpose, as Waji has said, could be an opportunity or could be a problem. So in order to build a great fintech, you need to address that, have a proper business case, and then you go, because there is a gap between what the customer got used to over the years. Recently, with the social media, with the big giant companies coming in, customers are used to very easy, flexible way through the apps, whereas the banks and financial institutions still lag behind. So the fintech will come in between to bridge that gap.
Okay, and Bhaskar, what are your views?
I mean, I'll go back to what I believe are three tenets of any good fintech solution, right? The first and most important thing is you've got to be simplifying a certain problem, right? It could be through great user experience. It could be through enriching a certain process of how a client goes through a certain experience, be it in investments, be it in payments, or whatever it is. So simplification of the experience is one of the, I think, paradigms of all new age fintechs. The second piece is efficiency, right? You got to make it extremely efficient. I mean, we've been living with a lot of legacy infrastructures, but technology has moved at such a significant pace that there's so many ways of doing what would take, for example, weeks to onboard a client to now potentially it getting done in a minute or a couple of minutes, to investments taking, for example, weeks to execute to potentially it getting done within 30 seconds to a minute. So efficiency is where a lot of what I call the grunt work of the technology part of a fintech happens. The third part is obviously the cost, the service point of how you're delivering a service at a fraction of what it used to take. So whether you take it Apple Pay or Samsung Pay, which simplifying the experience at no additional cost and extremely efficient because you're able to do everything, or things like what we do, which is called wealth management or self-service advisory, where it used to take weeks to get a process done, but now it's done on a mobile, so it's simple within 20 minutes. It's understandable, it's efficient because within half an hour your whole portfolio is set up to, again, at a cost point which is again a fraction of what banks or advisors used to charge. So I think those three tenets kind of sum up what I would call a great fintech.
Great fintech, okay. So obviously, as we can see, the cornerstones of building a good or great fintech is addressing a problem, having the solution being simple and efficient. So taking that into perspective, and sort of funneling it down, what sort of trends do you guys see developing in the fintech sector across the globe, and what sort of what kind of need does the fintech sector, does the banking sector need in this region, and how can fintech address that?
Okay, I think the banking sector.
Yes, come on.
Okay.
This is a free
I think
conversation.
from the banking sector side, it's always good to expand your business lines. Okay, we've been in the industry for a while, and the product has been always the same. But I think with fintechs, it's time to actually innovate and come up with the new business models and generating new revenues. And that could be really working closely and collaborating with these fintechs. So I think collaboration is a good way forward, and especially if you tap into the existing ones and you just create a revenue line for you through these startups.
Obviously, there are, like I said earlier, there was also external factors such as environment, regulation that plays into building your startup or your fintech startup. So how much of that actually helps a startup become, great?
Okay. Now, if I would speak from Bahrain perspective, we have open banking regulation, which requires the banks to open their data by June 2019 to all these fintechs and startups. I think this gives an opportunity for these fintechs to tap into a new businesses with the banks, but at the same time, it's changing the bank's business model. So that's the effect of regulation on us.
Robin and Bhaskar, coming from another emerging market, what sort of things do you see that are similar and that can also be applicable for fintechs in this region?
Well, I think what's happening in Southeast Asia and around the world applies everywhere, including the Middle East. First of all, everyone wants to get into banking in some shape or form. I mean, I think it was Bill Gates that said, we don't need banks, we just need banking. And you see a lot of mobile operators, non-banking institutions coming into this space and trying to monetize their customer base. And that's creating pressure on banks. And banking industry typically, is quite slow in innovating. But now, because of this pressure, they're trying to get ahead of the curve again. I think more fundamentally, I think a lot of banks are looking at defining what their core businesses are, because I think for many banks in the emerging markets, they've tended to be everything to everyone. And now they've got to figure out what is sustainable business for them. And my guess is things that are relationship driven. What is transactional, and those are potentially areas where they will collaborate with fintechs, because the cost to serve is much higher for them than it would be for a tech player or for a mobile operator. So I see these trends happening not just in Southeast Asia, but also in the region.
Okay, and Bhaskar from
I'll kind of
Singapore, what do you...
go back to part of your question because I think that's related. So if you take in terms of trends, banks and financial institutions first thought of fintechs as threats. I think that has dramatically changed over the last 3 to 4 years. It's become a lot more of collaboration, because I think banks have started to think about the real threat is actually from big tech, which is an Alibaba or a Facebook or an Amazon, starting to provide services where their primary core could get threatened in terms of over a 5-year. And you see that, for example, Lufax is already in Singapore launching their own wealth management services. So a lot of the perception of threats has changed in that sense, and therefore collaboration has come in. In terms of how that is applicable and changing or across Southeast Asia and here, I think it goes through the same, what I call education, exploration, analysis, paralysis kind of a situation, right? We've been kind of going and knocking doors in banks and other financial institutions for over 5 years in Southeast Asia, and it's taken at least a couple of years for that whole facade of saying, are you a partner or a threat, to change. And I think the same is happening here in the Middle East, where I think we were part of the DIFC High, but we also see the fact that lots of financial institutions are now trying to say, okay, let me just go and adopt and partner with certain solutions to be able to kind of leapfrog a certain typical evolution of services, and try and get to the same level as what it happens. So that evolution, I think, is definitely getting faster here in the Middle East. However, regulations, that's a completely different matter, right? Every fintech or bank obviously needs to be aware of how some of this, when we talk about simplification, you're actually, I think the biggest threat of simplification is what does the regulations allow you to do and not allow you to do, and how do you push those boundaries?
Sorry, on that note, on regulation. So obviously that is one sort of challenge that most fintechs face when they, want to build their companies. So from your point of view, having built, your own startup companies, what challenges do you commonly go through in building that?
I think it starts with the regulation. We spent at least 2 years meeting so many regulators across Southeast Asia and then in Dubai and now obviously across the Middle East. And I think if that openness to being able to tweak or push the envelope in terms of what's typically been the standard is not there, it would really slow down things. A classic case in our space of wealth management is, let's say, Hong Kong and Singapore. Both of them tout themselves as huge hubs from a wealth management space and also from a regulatory kind of governance space. But Hong Kong, from a regulatory perspective, has been extremely slow in terms of guidelines and ability to kind of push the envelope, versus Singapore has been the other extreme of being extremely open and allowing a lot more experiments, be it sandbox or guidelines. And the difference is perceptible now in 3 years. And similarly, that whole, what's called openness, if it's not there in the regulators.
So for you, the main part of it, the main challenge is regulation and environment. So for you, Robin, what was the main challenge you had to face when you were building Hello Gold?
Oh, that's actually a really interesting thing. Because gold is a relatively simple financial product to manufacture, there's very little regulation involved. Having said that, for us, we took the approach that would be very open with regulators as we go into each market. I think the biggest challenge is that regulation never contemplated this kind of paradigm shift in how things are done. And so even if the rules ostensibly permit certain activities, the regulators are kind of a bit reticent to allow you to play. And then they're also not able to give you guidance because they never contemplated having to deal with something like this. So oftentimes, it's a journey where you're trying to educate them as to why you're replicating something that already is allowed in a slightly more efficient form. And then they have to go back and think about these things, think about the risk to the marketplace, to the customers, etc. And I think it's
So basically,
tough.
it's understanding of the product itself.
Actually, the product is not understanding. Regulators, apologies to any regulators out there, my only thing is that I used to be a regulator too, so I understand the reticence. Regulators are not paid to take risks. And so it's challenging for them to undertake something that's completely new in the time frame that you as a startup require. And that's, we push them very hard and they want to do it. So you have one arm of the regulator being very pro-innovation, but you have the other arm which is responsible for market protection, customer protection. And those two things don't sit well together.
So obviously, partnering with fintechs is what financial institutions aim to do to create a more symbiotic environment. What are the challenges do you, Yusuf and Wajia, see in partnering with fintech companies?
Well, initially when the fintech emerged, the banks and financial institutions were skeptical about it and they were resisting it. Then they adapted a strategy for acquiring small fintechs, and that also proven to be a failure. Reason that these small fintechs are very agile, very quick to act. Once you put them under a bigger umbrella, then the hierarchy of decision-making kicks in, so you actually kill that innovation and creativity. So now I think now the banks and financial got to a stage where collaboration, as the right gentleman said, is the right way forward. I can speak about Credimax itself. We, 2 years back, partnered with one fintech company where we address a problem or we solved an issue with the government of cash handling. We actually, in some government ministries and authorities, we totally eliminated the use of cash. So that was 2 or 3 years ago that we started the deal. So to me, fintech is an opportunity. It gives me the arm and the competitive edge to reach and give the customer the frictionless experience they want. That's how I see it.
Okay, so your experience has been fairly positive. Wajia, what about you? How has it been working with fintech? What are the challenges that you face when you approach them and work with them?
I think I would emphasize on the point that you have to explain it sometimes to the management for them to understand, because after all, fintech has been really in the industry for recently, So explaining it and how the value of this and what is the return on investment, it takes a while, of course, to convince everyone and all the stakeholders involved. So that was a matter. Another matter which Yusuf has just mentioned here is that the cultural shift, even the employees themselves need to understand that what is the change that is happening to them. But going forward, I mean, as an example of what we did in Al Baraka, Turkey, is that we found that there is a new market which we can tap by actually collaborating and partnering with a fintech company. So we launched a fully digital bank in Germany, based in Berlin, by partnering with Solaris, which provides banking as a service solution. So really choosing the right model for the fintech to go further with as a business line was another challenge, but we had so far successfully gone with our digital bank in Germany.
Okay, so one more thing that I would like to touch on is, so as we're embarking on Industry 4.0, what do each of you think should be at the forefront of everybody's minds going into the next 5 to 10 years in this space?
I'm really passionate about Islamic finance. I think for too long, finance has been driven by the Anglo-Saxon model.
Yeah.
And Islamic finance, I'm not Muslim obviously, but it's ethical financing. There's an opportunity to reset how people look at finance and how to make a more equitable society using the tenets of Islamic finance. And that's why for me, the tech space now and being here is fundamentally important, because we have the opportunity to make finance truly inclusive and beneficial for everyone, and not just for those that have enough money in their wallet. And I think the next few years, we can either go back to the status quo ante and be business as usual, serving the more affluent, the more privileged, or we can completely rechange everything at a global level.
But that's exactly what everybody's trying to do, basically, financial inclusion, and that Islamic finance or SRI is basically something that could actually reach that target market. Wojia, sorry.
So adding on Robin's point as well, I think there are new technologies in the market which it's good to be leveraged within the financial industry. And here I will be speaking about artificial intelligence and IoT, Internet of Things. So I think by utilizing these technologies, you will just make the financial services better to the customers. And in fact, you'll be making that more friendly, if I would speak from that term, and better quality of services. So leveraging these technologies will be the way forward, I think.
Okay, and Yusuf,
Well,
the
I'm
striking
very
thing?
passionate about payments. We are in the payments industry. So I think the trend is moving towards having more of a easy to do business with when it comes to payments. So the plastics, some people say, will disappear. I disagree. It will remain for a while. The fact that some parts of the world has developed, some parts has not developed, but the fact that the people travel around the world, they will be faced one way or the other with the use of plastic. So it is moving towards contactless, towards mobile wallets, peer-to-peer, transfers. Yet again, this will be there for quite some time. If you can imagine, when the cards with plastic were produced, it remained for 50 years with magstripe. Then the chip came, and it revolutionized the way people chip and pin came. Now, emergence of digital payments. So I think it will go, but the digital have not replaced the chip and pin, because there are still big parts of the world, including here. And basically, one of the aims is to fight cash, and cash is a burden on the economy, burden on the individuals, and that is where payments, digital payments, comes into the play.
Okay, and Bhaskar.
I mean, again, from a version 4 or 5 or whatever you call it, I see 3 primary kind of shifts. The first I call is mass personalization. Typically, most financial solutions or products were what is called I have this whole bunch of things on the rack. I'm going to take it to you and give it to all 4 of you, more or less. I mean, even if it's cards, I have 3 types of cards. If it's investment products, I have 5 kinds of. Now with a lot of data, a lot of computing power, a lot of what's called algorithmic power, we are able to kind of mass personalize it. And there are examples across credit pricing, there's examples across investments and robo-advisory where we're able to literally mass personalize an offering of a product to each individual. That's one big tenet which is just, I think, just going to accelerate a lot more. The second piece is what I call data-related insights and effectively being able to predict and do a lot more from an experience perspective. Today, for example, we are able to look at data and kind of suggest saying, you're really not going to be able to meet your financial goals based on this, right? And we're just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the amount of things that you can do. So what are the 3 suggestions to change your lifestyle / spending patterns / investing patterns to be able to do that? And this is happening across a variety of things. It's happening across lending in terms of pricing. It's happening across investments in terms of suggestions as to how do you manage your money better. It's happening across other aspects. And the third part is what I call experience, and the way experiences are going to multiply and change across so many different channels. Earlier, to invest, I would have to go to a website or first go into a branch, but now I can go to a website, now I can go to an app. Tomorrow, you're going to get it on your smartwatch and contactless stuff where you're able to do everything. So there's, with what you call API-driven economy or shared open banking APIs, you're going to have an explosion in terms of the channels in which you're going to get serviced. So those are the 3, what's called
Okay, so the last thing that I would just want to ask all of you. So obviously, building a great fintech revolves around building a customer experience that is engaging and interactive and simple. So if there was an advice that you could give for startups in managing that aspect of customer experience, what advice would you give to further fine-tune and make a startup different from another?
I think just very simple, just making sure that whoever your end customer is that experience is as simple and as easy as possible. So effectively, they don't even have to think about it. If you think about what Uber or Careem can do, right? That the ability to just do that transaction in like 2 clicks of the button, I think is fundamental. I think if you can do that and continue to iterate towards it, making it, just something that's completely intuitive, that creates the right kind of user experience.
Simplicity and intuitiveness.
Yeah.
Ojia, what do you think?
Add on this
Okay.
is that, and I'll be putting it in a banking perspective, is that I recently read something called that banking should be soon invisible. Okay, which means that you don't disappear, but you're actually embedded in everyday life, of a customer life.
Yeah.
And that could be really achieved through fintechs, because what you do after all, as a customer, all what I want is that all the services is there when I want it, and very simple to use it. I don't need to know that it's a bank or a fintech behind it.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
As long as it provides you the service and the solution that you want.
So be invisible, but be there.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
Yusuf?
To me, there are 3 ingredients for success. Startups or banks or financial, superior quality of customer service should not be compromised at all, and fintech comes into that space. Launching new products and services, otherwise your products will be outdated soon and someone else will take over. And of course, embracing and having technology and the right set of skills within the workforce that will enable you to compete in such a rapidly competitive market and growing technology that outpace many of the banks and financial institutions.
I would have a simple rule of 5. If I'm not able to cut down the cost by 5 times, if I'm not able to deliver a product in 5 months, if I'm not able to kind of get 5 clients whom I pitch an idea to who says this makes sense, if I'm not able to cut down the time it takes to do a process by 5 times, if I don't meet at least 2 or 3 of this,
it's all about
don't do
costs
it.
for you.
This time is cost.
How does that connect with customer experience then?
Exactly, because
we're trying to
earlier, for example, let's take simple onboarding. If I were to get on board in a bank, I would fill the same form or same details in 5 forms, and it would take me easily half an hour, even if it was a relationship manager doing it. If I'm not able to do it in 3 to 5 minutes, then I've not simplified that process.
Right, so obviously all these things are intertwined. Simplicity, being embedded in customer lives, talent, and cost.
Something as boring as onboarding is that. There's obviously a lot
Sorry?
more. Something as simple as onboarding,
yeah.
is that. But there's so much which can be done from a user experience which is softish. The language you speak while you're actually kind of getting someone to do some pieces, to the visual image.
That goes back to simplicity and efficiency. All right, we basically have 1.5 minutes left on the clock. If anybody has questions for our panelists, perhaps? No? Right. I guess we can all adjourn for lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope that was informative.
Thank you.
So please don't go for lunch because we've got something very special for you now. We've got the
بالتوفيق إن شاء الله. بالتوفيق.
That was the wrong move.
Right, that's better, isn't it? Okay, so I was about to lose my voice. So we've got 6 investors, 5 startups. They get 3 minutes. I want the investors to act like dragons or sharks, depending on whether you're in the Americas or the UK, and grill these guys. Obviously, it's a unique opportunity to pitch in front of people on a stage this size. We're going to be strict on the timing, so when 3 minutes is up, we're going to get them to stop, and the investors can then grill them about their idea. So, have we got a handheld mic for the investors? For the investors? Okay, fine. Right, so the first startup pitching is called Flickron. And a round of applause for Abdullah Al-Zahari.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Abdullah Zahiri. I'm the CEO of Flickron, along with my team. Can we have the presentation, please? Okay, thank you. Flickron is a micro-influencers marketplace. Why Flickron? Because the companies now, when they want to make social media campaigns, they have faced difficulty in finding proper influencers. They have to select them individually, negotiate with them individually, and also negotiate the terms. Flickron solves this problem by we have created a portal for brand managers, clients, and an application for the influencers to use. Our process is the brand manager upload their campaign, notification goes to the influencer through the application, and influencers put their bids. If they are approved, they start, the campaign is started. We monitor the campaign. We make sure that the influencers have done their job properly, and the client is satisfied. After the campaign is done, we provide the clients with report analytics on the impact of the campaign. This is the market size. As you have you can see how it leaped from 2017. This is Saudi Arabia market to 2018, and we are expecting the same in 2019. Our business model, currently we sell packages to clients. for ready-made content and customized content. In 2019, we will start the subscription for also brand managers and clients, and we will start commissions schemes. Our competition in Saudi Arabia, we have direct and indirect competitors. Most of our indirect competition will be our partners. In fact, they will be our alliances. So we are not really worried about that. Why Flickron? Flickron is the first in the Saudi Arabian market. We are very adapted to any new technology. Whatever our clients want to use, any social media portal, we can adapt that to our application. This is what our investment, if we receive funding, this is what we are going to do. We will do partnerships with like advertisement agencies. We will go around and do education about the micro-influencer.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Time's up. Thank you very much. Round of applause for Abdullah. Right, I was very remiss earlier. I didn't introduce the investors, so let's quickly do that before we have questions. So can you put your hand up when I introduce you, for those at the back? So the first one, Abdullah Al-Shaksi, the CEO of Phase Ventures. Abdullah, thank you. Nawaf Al-Koheji, CEO of Tenmu. Hassan Haider, of course. I still have one of his ties. Partner from 500 Startups. It's a nice Hermes tie. Bader Sater. Ask me later. Program manager from C5. Okay, brilliant. Christos Mastoras from the managing partner of Iliad Partners. Christos, thank you. And Riyad Abu Jadoueh from managing director of MEVP, one of our sponsors. Okay, please, guys, questions for Abdullah.
Okay. Hello. So it's an interesting space that you're operating in. Okay, that's actually what I was going to ask. How have you been generating revenues, and how has that been growing over the past couple of months? And where do you see most of your product market fit? What are the customers like that are using your product?
The first question is how we are going to generate?
Yes, how are you generating revenues, and how has that been growing?
Can I go back, guys? Yeah, here. Currently, we sell packages, so the client can choose from ready-made content that they have, or customized content. So we make the campaign, the pictures, the videos, whatever they want. This is what we're selling. Later on, we are developing another service now with subscription for clients, and later on commissions for referrals. So this will be our source of income.
So right now it's all through the partnerships. How much of it is the client providing the content versus you developing the content? Because you developing the content is not very scalable, I would imagine.
That's why we are providing this. But at the moment, this is all of the demands is in the packages.
Okay.
So we are going with that.
How much have you generated in the last month, and has that been growing?
The last 2 months? This is what we have generated so far. If you see there, it's actually more. This is not updated. In the last 2 months, since the beginning of 2019, about 200,000.
To follow on that question about the scalability, if you're seeing most of the demand focused on the packages, what's your plan to shift that demand towards the scalable model?
That's a very difficult question. Well, from what we have seen, as I have showed you earlier, we haven't seen anything that necessitate different packages or services we are providing. So we're going with this.
So you think
for scalability even.
does that mean, you know, you're going to have to scale one-to-one in terms of your team size as you're scaling revenue, or do you see that there's some other thing that will unfold that will allow that packages segment to be scalable?
We have so many factors influencing this decision. One of that is the talent. So talent, acquiring talent also will make us maybe change this.
Abdullah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have to be strict on the timing, but thank you
Okay.
guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Abdullah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done. Right, next up is Sophie Smith from Nabta Health. Ready, Sophie?
Ready as
It's
I'll
all
ever
yours.
be. Thank you.
Round of applause.
Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Salam alaikum. My name is Sophie Smith. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nabta Health. Nabta is a hybrid healthcare platform for women. Our mission is to empower the 500 million women in the MENA region, that's the Middle East, Africa, and Southern Asia, to more effectively manage their health. Before I start the pitch, I'd like you to forget what you know about healthcare, because what we're proposing is an entirely new model. And our aim ultimately is to make healthcare affordable and accessible for all women in the region. We're focused on 5 main problem areas outlined above, for now predominantly focused on infertility. Women's health, as I'm sure you're aware, is a globally under-researched effort. And we're working in a region that has some of the worst stats on female empowerment and education in the world. For example, 80% of breast cancers here are diagnosed at stage 4, which is terminal. 40% of women don't attend a single antenatal appointment. And there's about a 1 to 1,000 ratio for every research paper that has been completed on women's health issues, as opposed to gender-neutral or male-specific health issues. Globally, we've seen a significant decline in the fertility rate over the past 25 years, nowhere more so than in the GCC. 70% of female-related infertility issues are due to something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, and about 60% of these are related to a metabolic disorder such as diabetes or obesity, the reason that we're focusing on fertility for now. The problem as we see it is that fundamentally there is no way for women at the moment to connect their wellness to their health, to their medical data. What this means is that there is no way for me to see how my sleep may be affecting my stress levels, could be impacting my cycle length, which may or may not be due to the fact that I've developed insulin resistance, which could be affecting my hormone levels, etc., etc. And without these connections, there's no way for women to action any of the insights that they get and to solve the problems that they have. So what does a hybrid care pathway look like? Firstly, what we're not trying to do is completely replace traditional care. Instead, we're taking 5 key virtual care components and integrating them into traditional care pathways. These are mobile apps, smart medical devices, smart tests, virtual consultations, and machine learning. We have 3 mobile apps that we're working on at the moment. The main one is the Nabta app, which I'll come on to in a second, and everything in the context of this first care pathway that we're looking at, which is the diagnosis of fertility issues. The Nabta app is a 4-mode app that allows women to either get fit and healthy, track their cycle with a specific mode for trying to conceive, monitor a pregnancy or prepare for menopause. We decided to combine the functions into a single app because they are sequential. You will never be simultaneously monitoring a pregnancy and also preparing or tracking your cycle. They're underpinned.
Sorry to interrupt, Sophie. That's 3 minutes.
I thought we had 5.
3 minutes. Actually, you have 6. 3 minutes for the pitch and 3 minutes for them to grill you. But you can have another minute if you like, because if we haven't explained the rules properly, you have another minute if you like.
Cool, that would be great.
But we'll have 2 minutes questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
So they're underpinned by 2 bits of machine learning. The first powers a personal health assistant, Aya, whose job it is to provide users with insights, information, and recommendations that are personalized for them. The second is a health score that is based on about 250 weighted parameters, and it changes in the context of what the individual is trying to achieve. If the individual wants to lose weight, then they get a basic health score that is adjusted accordingly. If they want to conceive, then it will apply additional fertility parameters over the top. And what this means is that then we give them very specific recommendations in terms of the smart medical devices we refer them to, the smart tests, which are home test kits that they can use at home. Either they get the results instantly or they send off for them. In terms of the virtual consultations and the OB-GYNs that we would recommend, or the clinicians we would recommend for them to see, and then in terms of how we would configure their score and update it on an ongoing basis. This is a very briefly, not as briefly as it could be, but briefly, a user's experience of hybrid healthcare. This is our market. It's a multi-market opportunity, $4.2 trillion. We're targeting the 4 segments listed at the bottom. That's briefly our revenue model. We make money from subscriptions to the platform, from the sale of our hybrid products and services, and also through affiliate marketing. And that's an old slide, but that's basically how our revenue targets over the next 3 years are distributed by segment.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Round of applause for Sophie. Thank you very much. Right, judges, over to investors, dragons, sharks, over to you.
Hello. So very interesting idea for many different reasons. My question to you is, if you were to identify the biggest single largest risk for your company not to succeed, and you cannot say funding, what would it be, and how will you plan to mitigate that?
I think the biggest single risk for us is that the concept of hybrid healthcare is a very new one, and we're trying to launch the platform in a region where there's still a very traditional outlook where healthcare is concerned. So people invest in clinics, they invest in brick and mortar, maybe now more recently they invest in telehealth. But what we are proposing is an entirely new model of healthcare that is a value-based care model. So the idea is that we prioritize patient health over anything else, over the commercialization of healthcare, over keeping people sick as opposed to keeping people healthy. So we're fighting a current and also trying to introduce a new concept in a market that is still new to the idea of health tech.
Thanks.
Just one more question for Sophie.
Yeah, I think my main question is really around how are you going to actually go out and capture your potential customers, because you mentioned it very clearly, right? So most women in this region, or a large portion of women, they only get diagnosed, for instance, with breast cancer at a very late stage. And so if connecting or if their understanding of their own health is really hurt, how do you plan on getting them on board with such a new concept, which is already very far away from what they are familiar with?
So all of our marketing so far has been digital marketing and purely B2C. So we reach our customers in a number of different ways. We run quarterly awareness campaigns that are focused on specific women's health issues. We have Facebook groups that we've set up to support different segments of those issues, and we've seen amazing traction through them. So we've engaged almost 10 million women since we launched the platform 18 months ago. Because of the way that we have built the platform, it's entirely personalized and also built to accommodate a user's circumstances. So we would not recommend to them things that they could not afford. We would recommend things to them that were in their price range and price bracket, and we would recommend them in language and on terms that they understand.
Okay, Sophie, thank you very, very much. Round of applause for Sophie. Obviously, our startups will be available to talk to you guys afterwards. Well done, Sophie. Thanks very much. We've had a slight mutiny amongst the startups. Apparently, they're expecting to get 5 minutes to pitch, so we're going to resolve that by giving them 5 minutes and then a minute of questions, or they can do 3 minutes and 3 minutes, whichever comes easiest to them. So, without further ado, we will have our next startup. And this is Loktra, which is pitched by Arpit Gupta. Round of applause, please.
Hello, friends. So we are Loktra,
we are a complete banking operating system to launch any financial institute or any financial services. So if you are having a banking license or any kind of license in terms of financial services, and you want to launch your service, you'll come on the Lokta platform, you'll use your license, and then you'll choose all your integrations and everything, and then you will launch your bank, and from the next day onwards, you can provide your services or the complete backend of your services for the customers. So today, the major problem which is happening is that in a banking industry, there are multiple softwares, multiple technologies which are being used. There are CRMs, core banking system, credit bureaus, KYC, ML systems, and banks need to incorporate system integrators to integrate all these services, which takes a lot of implementation time. So if suppose in a bank, you need to incorporate any new services, the sales cycle is typically 1 to 2 months, and the implementation cycle is again a 6 months to 1 year. So the complete implementation time takes somewhere close to 1.5 year. And then also the service can be successful or can be a failure. So for this, we have developed the platform, we call it banking operating system, that has pre-integrated applications to run complete retail financial institute. So this is majorly the marketplace. This marketplace is similar to Google Play Store or Apple App Store, where you can integrate all the apps available on the marketplace. So in this case, if suppose you are having 2 credit bureaus and you want to change the credit bureau for the bank, you can just click and deploy the credit bureau, and the credit bureau's service will get changed. So the change in the service will be as quick as just clicking and deploying it. Why we are doing it now? There are 2 major reasons. First is the open banking, because the APIs, because the banks are now becoming more conducive of grabbing in APIs, and because of the cloud adoption. Earlier, this needed to be done for each and every banking institute, but with the adoption of cloud, we can have a centralized platform, a centralized operating system. Total addressable market, this market is very big. Since we are in the banking IT, which globally is a $500 billion market. Now the business model for this particular, for the development of the complete banking operating system, which is a very big task, we have divided the problem into 3 parts, which is basically discover. You can discover your customers. So this is majorly about getting the customers from all the sources or from all the channels into your banking purview. This what we call is sales maximization platform, and it is live with 15 customers, out of which 14 are in India and 1 global. So then the next product which we are looking towards is the origination platform. This product will get live in June, where you can completely originate your customer, and this will the final one is the transactional based complete banking operating system, where you can transact all the services, which is payments or all the kind of transactions which are required. So the pricing which we have put it on completely transactional basis, so that a small institute as well as big banks, we can cover the complete purview, so that they can use them. Now I'll skip this part. We are already live with customers, and we are getting more customers in March and April month. So for our revenue, we are already revenue generating with for this current financial year, as in India, from April 18 to Feb 19, we have already made a revenue of 300K, and our target is that by March 2020 we should achieve a MRR of 400K, and by March 2021 an MRR of 1.5 million. This is our journey. We launched the sales maximization platform in Feb 2019, and in June 2019 we'll be launching the origination platform, and the final banking operating system will get completely live in January 2021. These are some of our competitors. How we differentiate from our competitors is basically we take a marketplace approach. We are taking a digital approach rather than digitization, and the third is the experience layer which we are building.
Okay, thank you, Arpi. That was 5 minutes so quickly from the judges. A question from the investors. We have a minute left.
So today the customers you have are buying the core banking solution from you and adding services, or are they today buying just solutions and linking them to their existing systems?
So today they are just buying the solution because it's very difficult for a startup today to say that, hey, I want to completely revolutionize or change your systems.
Yeah.
How do we pitch is that, hey, this is one peripheral solution, which is sales maximization platform. We want to increase your sales, or we want to transform the way in which your sales team is functioning. And this also gives us a leeway to enter or to create different products and get the customers early on, first to get revenues, and second to get the correct feedback to make the correct product.
But do you think that the banks, the incumbent banks, will ever be the right target for a complete solution and a marketplace-based approach, or are you thinking about banking, whatever, the new banking, digital banks, all these?
You have 10 seconds to answer that.
So the incumbent banks will come to the platform later on when they'll find value in onboarding, on getting onboarded to the platform. So when we have all the integrations available on our marketplace, then they will come in. Initially, we are not targeting them. Initially, we are targeting the challenger and the mid-sized bank and emerging
Thank you very much. Arpit Gupta, thank you very much from Loxtra. Well done. Right, we've got 2 startups left, so thank you. Do you want to give that over? So the next startup is called Saya Health, and it's being pitched to you by none other than Salman Ahmad. Welcome to the stage. Round of applause.
Hello, hello. So about 80 to 100 billion dollars are lost globally because of emotional health issues across the world. And this is not just because of productivity, right? You're stressed. You're also making wrong decisions because you're under stress or anger management issues. And sometimes it results in tragedy, like the German wings crash, where a pilot took down a plane as a suicide attempt, right? So this is a huge problem. And in the region, no one is focusing on this. What we are doing is emotional healthcare in the whole region, and we mean the Indian subcontinent and MENA, is inaccessible, is untraceable, so we don't know the issues and we don't know if it's helping people, right? And it's culturally inappropriate. And this is what Saya Health is trying to help with. Now, we have easy access to well-being tools. We have our own app. We have our own technology. Very simple. You sign in, you schedule, and you take calls with our counselors and psychologists across the world. Now, what we're doing is we're making an intelligent EAP for cultural fit. Now, what does that mean? That means that we will be accessible in private. We will also be culturally geared. So we will be in Arabic, we'll be in Urdu, we'll be in Tamil if you need to be. And we have feedback loops with sort of a stress map the organizations and tell you how to fix everything. The business model is very, very simple. It's a traditional EAP model, except it is empowered and enabled by tech, right? So we have an X dollar per month per employee, but what we add to this is a USP of stress mapping and trends and consultation reports, because we have a dedicated team of therapists just for your organization. Essentially, what this means is that we have a very high demand for this, and so we found product market fit. These are organizations that we're in various sales cycles with, or we have already closed sales with, right? And which essentially means we believe we can go to $100 million out of this $3 billion estimated market. Who is we? Is myself, with my 11 years of experience at Procter & Gamble and my MBA from IE University. It is my friend Alize, who is a mental health therapist herself and has started a few projects herself. It is my CTO, a Swedish Pakistani gentleman who was among the people behind Flight Radar as well. And we have the backing and the strategic backing of a lot of organizations across the world. This includes the International Islamic Association, this includes the Middle East Psychology Association, and we use them, and we use our experts, like Dr. Kerry York, based in Iowa, like Dr. Kriti Jain, based in Spain, who is an INSEAD PhD, on how do we help organizations, not just with their emotional health, but we have a feedback loop to explain to them and consult with them how to fix their issues. So where are we today is essentially we started in June 2018 with an MVP, a pilot was completed, the tech is our own now. We are now at 4,500 users, acquired as of Jan 2019. We are in late stages to sign on a Fortune 50 company for the region, right, for these services. And hopefully, eventually, since we own the tech, we could do things like AI for screening, not for chatbots or anything like that, for screening. And for all of this, we're looking for $250,000 for a 15% equity. Thank you very much. It's 3 minutes, and I'd like your questions.
Well done there. That was exactly, or very close to 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes, slightly less from the investors. Hassan.
So you threw me off right at the beginning when you said there's no competitors in the market because we've invested in one and there's 2 others that I've seen.
Cheslong?
Cheslong and then
but Cheslong does not do EAP. It's doing a marketplace for mental health. But it's not EAP. It's not for corporates. It's you go in and you just book a counselor and there's a rating and you just do it, right?
Okay, so
we were doing that. We pivoted away from it when we found that people like Procter & Gamble and Philip Morris are more interested in give us a team of therapists who speak the language and tell us what we should do to become better. Like emotional loop.
So now your business model is B2B?
B2B employee assistance programs.
Okay.
Right? Something that Lyra Health, so I mean, I didn't have this, but so essentially Lyra Health in North America is doing this. So this is, but that's North American EAP, and it's the ex-CFO of Facebook, right? He's doing it for North America. It's a very specific product.
Okay.
We hope to become that. Maybe that's our exit, hopefully.
All right, so that's the differentiating factor
so
that you have.
this is the B2B market, by the way. So B2C is packed. It's packed, like you say.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
100%,
Like,
totally packed.
Because that threw me off when you're like mental health, no one's doing it. I was like, no, that's
so
not
it's EAP.
true.
We're not playing in this market. It's packed. We're playing in this market.
All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And so right now you're doing a B2B business model. How's your sales cycle and how are you acquiring these users, the businesses that you're trying to onboard right now?
So essentially, we're using our partners at the EDB to get HR directors and calls with HR people. You know, I've been in the region for like all my life, so I have connections in Deloitte, PwC, etc. So we're using our own personal connections, and once we have big people like Procter & Gamble, so I worked with P&G for 11 years, right? They tap us into the other areas. So we're talking with AXA Insurance. So they own ICAS at the moment, but ICAS is a South African company, doesn't have a very good network in the region, and does not use tech at all, right?
And so do you see that differentiating factor being, something that the other more crowded space can't imitate and also pivot into?
So if you're already a marketplace and you have all of these things, you don't have that sort of, we're giving you a team. So essentially we have our first pilot, right? We have a big university with 4,500 students. And what we do is, here's 6 counselors, 24 hours a week, right? So 24 hours in the whole week. And essentially we feedback what's wrong and what's right. This is a different operational model. If you're already in the market space like Cheslong, why would you do that? And also the sales cycle is a bit longer, right? I mean, the subscription model is better.
Less crowded space, as you say.
It's less crowded, yeah, it's less crowded space, but also it's a subscription. So it's essentially, for example, X dollars per employee per month. There you go. And nobody's doing it for the MENA region. There are companies operating in the region, but they're not companies that I have, established in the region.
Brilliant. All right, well, thank you very much, Salman. Thank you. Round of applause, everybody. Well done. Very good timekeeping. Right, one more startup to go, guys. So I'd like to introduce, for his 6 minutes of fame, Basel Kabuk from Baitoka.
Right, good afternoon. So nice to be the last one. So Baitoka, you're home away from home, or quite simply put, it's the Arabic attempt of an Airbnb. How many of you are familiar with Airbnb by raise of hand? Oh, that's going to make my life much easier. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk about 2 types of customers that we interact with. It's the host and the guest. Obviously, the host is the person who owns the apartment, the person holding the keys. And the guest is the person who is looking for an apartment for short-term lease. What's the problem? And both of my customers face a big problem. To start with the hosts, the current real estate market condition overall in the GCC is quite difficult. Anybody who owns a property is finding it difficult to sell, lease it. So it's a very difficult market, and short-term lease is a very good solution. Anybody who did that investments 3-4 years ago and is now doing a long-term lease, the return on investment comparing to a short-term lease, we're yielding about 1.4 to 1.6 higher returns on investment for those real estate owners. And the last but not least, property owners who are already on Airbnb are losing roughly about $1,000 a year. Basically, all the transactions are handled through the US office, so you're receiving money in US dollars and very high transfer fees to roughly a $25 loss per booking. If you count that into a year, that's about $1,000 a year. What's the problem of our guests? So we're known to have one of the highest number of people per household. We need a big space. When you look at hotels, an average hotel room is anywhere between 25 to 45 square meter, nowhere enough for our guests. So having an apartment, having that space, having a kitchen is a great added value. Currently there is no portal in Arabic language. I'm sure that is temporary, but Airbnb doesn't even cater to Arabic language yet. Price, obviously. Hotels are way more expensive than your average apartment that you're renting. So these three solutions are where we come in. Basically, what we're doing is an Arabic-speaking web platform that connects travelers to hosts in the Middle East. We're looking to save some money for the traveler. We're looking to make more money for the apartment owner. And we're looking to share a bit of Arabian hospitality. We're quite known for hospitality. This is our thing. Just by giving you a small example with one of the hosts we're experimenting with, we're offering every guest a mug of Arabic coffee as a welcome. And that small thing is making a big impact. People are talking about those small impacts that we're changing. Let's look a bit at the market. So today, this is 2017 statistics, and I'm using the Dubai market as an example. 6,000 properties listed. 185 is the average price of those properties. How does Airbnb monetize? They take a 10% commission fee from the guest. And they claim to have 90,000 guests in Dubai alone in 2017. I'm sure that number has doubled by today. We're looking at a 1.5 million revenue just in Dubai. Baytuka is currently where we are today. We have a fully functional website that's just launched. It's a mobile-friendly, obviously available in Arabic language. We have a very active and engaged social media following, about 17,000 followers. And we've just launched our IP-based solution for language and currency. We found a lot of people are not very happy by seeing a US dollar pricing when they're looking at a property in Saudi Arabia, for example. What do we want to do in 2019? And that's the most interesting part of my presentation. We want to partner with a food delivery company to be able to give you a local breakfast experience. So I found out that a lot of people love hotels due to the breakfast. We're going to offer something even better. I stay at an apartment in Bahrain. I get a Haji Hassan breakfast. I stay in an apartment in Jordan. I get a Hashem breakfast. So it's a touch of the local breakfast. We found out that our hosts are quite different than the ones in Europe and the US. It's their second or third property. They don't want to be involved. So we want to automate the cleaning service. We want to get out that involvement of the host owner. The moment the guest checks out, a cleaning company checks in, cleans the apartment, and hands over to the next guest. Obviously, easy payout solutions to avoid the loss of money that they're facing with Airbnb and attract our first hosts. Who's behind the team? It's myself.
Okay. Barcel, that's 5 minutes, right?
Cool, thank you.
Sorry. Guys, questions, please.
So question I have is, obviously Airbnb is in the same space. What will stop them from trying to, competing with you directly, and how will you protect yourself? Like if they try to create something more localized for the region, what are the barriers, to entry and what, into the region, and will be your competitive advantage?
They are already in the region. The barrier is that they're not going to change their worldwide structure to adjust for the Middle East. So they're not going to automate cleaning just in the Middle East on their whole platform just to serve for this. They might launch in Arabic language, and that's not really our competitive advantage. That's something that we have over them today, but that's not going to be forever, obviously.
Right, but you're saying that people will rent properties because of the cleaning service? I think that's sort of an auxiliary, secondary service. It's more about, I guess, the price and quality. So on that level, on the core business, how do you envision? Will you coexist? Will you compete directly? What's the differentiator there?
We're offering a full experience. At the end of the day, Airbnb is just you rent the apartment, you get it, you check out, you're done. With us, it's more of you get a traditional breakfast, you get your coffee at welcome. So there is a touch of Arabian hospitality, and that's a big differentiator from a guest perspective. From a host perspective, you're still losing less money on your transaction fees and your transfer fees.
Okay, guys, I'm afraid time's up. I know. Give a round of applause.
We have a
for
booth
Badr.
outside, so it's okay. Thank you.
Do come and speak. Startups, come and speak to the investors. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Round of applause for our investors. Come on. We will be starting on the main stage again in approximately 15 minutes. So 14:10, 2:10, we'll be starting up here again. Don't forget, there is another stage, the future stage. It's on that side of the building. It's past the VIP lounge. And there is a great workshop this afternoon hosted by Amazon Web Services at 3:15. So please all do join that. Thank you very much. Have a little break. Have some fresh air, and we'll see you in a bit.